All right, so I'm live. I had to create another live stream.
Oh, so the one
So
we have posted doesn't work?
can you get this out to the people? If I send you
Once I kick it off,
the
I can,
link? Okay.
but I can't do it because I'm about to start. Yeah.
Okay.
So like 2 minutes.
Okay. All right, so we're live on a different. Huh? I'll do that. Mhm. Eli, can you tell the other people that they're going to be receiving another stream link?
I don't have access to the people who registered in their contact information.
Okay, that's fine. I didn't know if you could message people on there. Copy this video.
On the other one? Oh, hold on. Let me see. Let me see if I can do that.
Charged by Springfield Technical Community College. I'll explain a little bit about the facility, but first I want to go over some logistics for you guys.
Oh, I think I could put it in the chat maybe.
I'm sure there was any of that subway burns their grinders when they're cooking
Let me
up.
do that.
Fire alarms might go off. If that happens,
I'm going to put the phone down.
to your right, there's a set of frosted doors that lead out to White Street. Once you hit White Street, go up underneath the bridge, hang out there. We'll bring it back in when it's all
I'm going
done.
to send you the link too.
Usually doesn't, but just to be safe. The restrooms, if anybody needs the restrooms. Guys, you came in under the blue lights. You pass the hallway on your left. Down that hallway are the men and women's restrooms.
And can you test it?
Okay.
Go on and check it out.
If anybody needs to make a call, there's some seats out here, some comfortable orange and blue chairs. Feel free to hang out there. Give your
Audio.
word.
I'm gonna go hang on.
Austin Wave Austin. He's got an
I have a
Xbox game
microphone
controller.
cable, do you?
Feel free to
Do you have a
just-
microphone cable?
So we do have Xbox here. We have 2 range classrooms here. How many of you actually use our facility right now? Show me your hands. Awesome, thanks. So our facility is kind of unique, right? So it started as a concept back in 2018. Local business people were saying they wanted to sort of boost the economy here, and they were looking for ways to do that. Cybersecurity was a big initiative. So they went and found some funding. He placed his name with Richard E. Neal, Cybersecurity Center of Excellence, because Richard E. Neal founded earmarked $3 million.
I'll leave this with you.
Started off the ground. In addition to that, the state found $1.5 million to contribute, and then the city of Springfield themselves donated another $500,000. That's why we're here. We're not on campus. The reason we're not on campus is this was never intended to be a stick-only facility. This was owned and operated through STIC, through the licensure with the Springfield Redevelopment Authority, who owns the train station space. The reason why they're all involved in this collaborative space is because it's grant funded, right? So there's another entity that we'll talk about briefly today, Cyber Trust Massachusetts. Cyber Trust Massachusetts is a quasi-state agency, meaning it's kind of in the state, it's kind of private, right? The guy that runs that, Peter Sherlock, the CEO of Cyber Trust Massachusetts, was the COO of the MITRE Corporation. Anybody know the MITRE Corporation? One person, okay, 2, 3. So MITRE Corporation, you guys are cheating back there. So the MITRE Corporation, they are the think tank of Bedford, Mass. So the government command group, MITRE is pretty big in military and cybersecurity in a lot of places. But they're the really smart people that tell the world what's going on, right? So the COO from that organization started Cyber Trust Massachusetts under the Mass Cyber Center, but we have a representative here today, Max Faith. Say hi, Max.
All right.
So the Mass Cyber Center is a state agency under EOS.
Office of Economic Development and Mass Tax Law.
Thank you. So those gentlemen and ladies over there, what they do is they help develop programs, find funding to develop programs like ours to help fund this going forward so that cybersecurity, specifically with the Mass Cyber Center, they offer grants, programs, and initiatives and ways to shore up our communities, right?
Can you
So
hear it?
businesses, students, all of them are really in some way thankful
So
to
you
Mass
see
Cyber
him
Center
good and hear him
getting
good?
involved in cybersecurity.
Awesome.
Because without them,
Awesome.
a lot of this wouldn't be possible. So thank you for Mass Cyber Center for doing what you guys do. For those of you that aren't aware, there's a camera in the back of the room. If your camera's shot, sit out of scope. This is being streamed to YouTube, and it'll be recorded there, so that if there's something you saw that you want to go back and watch later, or for the people that maybe have classes couldn't be here today, they can go back and watch it on the YouTube channel over at Stick. YouTube. There you go. Oh, awesome. So let's see. Did the logistics, a little bit about this place. So I've been here for about 2.5 years. Started over at Stick before this place became possible. Trying to get the businesses going, kind of a jack of all trades. Before here, what did I do? I used to work at Holyoke Community College eons ago. Over at Holyoke Community, I was there when there was a place called academic computing. And then the CIOs merged shops. One retired, the other one took over academic and administrative. With that CIO, I was responsible for, it's kind of funny, I started off being responsible for the help desk. My first day on the job, no desk, no phone, no computer, no staff. But I'm the help desk manager. So who am I managing and with what, right? If I had to build it from scratch. So it was kind of fun. Started using, at the time we called them work study students, people with financial aid benefits who could work around the school. Started with 31 of them, got them helping in the labs, maintaining the computer systems. Started with a help desk software out of Australia for $800 that allowed us to do remote access when remote access wasn't really a known thing. So that was kind of fun. And then from there, I worked my way up. Went through director of support operations, director of IT operations, director of network operations, director of information security, and then sat there and said, I kind of hit the glass ceiling, right? I left there to go to an insurance company out in Boston. So it was the good guys in Boston, right? So it's an insurance company that I don't think any of you have ever heard of. How many have heard of homesite insurance? Right. But if you have an insurance policy with parental, flood, or homeowners, if you look at the very bottom of your policy, it's underwritten by homesite insurance. Homesite insurance private labels for Geico, Progressive, Wells Fargo, General, a ton of other ones. So we were responsible, we were a cloud-only shop, and I run security, both physical and internet security and cybersecurity for the whole organization. That was fun. We had an Occupy movement come right down our street. That was fun. So you can imagine that that kind of an environment. They've now merged with American Family Insurance. They're down on one bed. They will be here at our next session if you guys are interested to talk with somebody like that. But in addition, from there, I went and worked at UMass President's Office out of Shrewsbury, Mass. President's Office does all the shared services for the systems, right? So registration, student aid, all this stuff, purchasing, procurement, all the stuff that all the campuses do together, we decided to put them under Romney's office. How long ago it was. We decided to put them all under one platform. So we secured that, and that was fun. We started doing things really well. The President's Office was known for their networking capabilities. You might have heard of dark fiber running up and down the pipe. They leveraged and managed the dark fiber, brought it up to other institutions. They did really well with that. We secured all of that. We did really well at security to the point where the governor's office asked us to run security, not just for the university, but for a lot of other state agencies that couldn't do it on their own, as well as for some private institutions. I could only name two today, because some of them still have an NDA open, but there was Bentley and Network, those two I did name. Pretty cool tools, pretty disparate institutions, especially from the university, all 5 campuses. You're thinking about 60,000 nodes, right? So with all of that in mind, we did pretty good. We opened a grant under Logarithm. How many of you have heard of Logarithm? How many of you have heard of Splunk? A little more. Logarithm is like Splunk. So Logarithm was a new tool. The reason why we went with them is just before we had started looking, they'd come out with a big press release that they could hit 300,000 events per second. Given the size and scope of our monitoring systems, we wanted something that could scale up, so we went with them. Never had a problem. Got citations from the governor, from our university president, that went pretty well. And then from there, I went to work at Reliant Medical Group. It's up and down the central corridor of Massachusetts, from the northern side of the state to the southern. And 23 clinics, 1 hospital, 9 urgent care centers responsible for security for that. So I got into HIPAA a little bit there, some of the privacy practices, a lot of the cybersecurity, a lot of OT devices, right? Think about X-ray machines, think about all that data signals going across the network, think about all the wireless platforms that doctors and nurses use. Secure that, right? So that was fun. From there, say hi, Jason. From there, I worked with Jason. Jason is from Emma. How many of you have heard of Emma? Emma provides power. Cheating again. So Emma provides power to 21 communities? 20 communities across Massachusetts, from Peabody, Massachusetts, all the way out to Ludlow, Massachusetts, where they're stationed. They are a black site facility, which means they have a power plant that should everything get shut off, they can spin it back up on their own. So they have a really cool facility out there. Jason is one of their chief members out in their IT department. So if anybody have any OT questions, I'm sure Jason would want to answer a few. And then from there, I came here to do this because I think it's a really cool project to be able to help the community grow in cybersecurity, right? It's a field I'm very passionate about. It's a field I have a lot of breadth and depth to. And being able to share that with all of you, as well as the rest of the community and small businesses. Rob, would you mind reading? Rob Delmastro. Rob is the regional director of the Massachusetts Small Business Division Development Corporation.
Development Center.
Thank you. Hi. Wow. So Rob's very special because he helps all those small businesses. If you want to start an LLC, a sole proprietor, Rob can help. Rob and his team have the ability here from Worcester West, right? New York border?
My team's, from Worcester West.
Yeah, he can help establish things like that. So if you're an entrepreneur thinking about it, contact him. Very special guy to help out. Who did I miss here? I think we covered most of you guys. Holyoke's in the house, Holyoke Community sits in the house. There's a lot of small businesses in the house. They have my team here. Appreciate all of you showing up. If I could, I think I'm done taking the air out of the room. Jason, would you mind presenting?
I'll take the rest of it,
next.
no problem.
So Professor Alvis, and I apologize if I called you for your first name, but Professor Alvis here, he works here as well. He works at the STIC. He is sort of one of the founding fathers. He's a preeminent cybersecurity specialist and trains a lot of the STIC students. He's been doing it for years here. Very, very knowledgeable individual, and he's going to chat with you guys a little bit.
So one of my favorite IT jokes is, you know what expert is, right? X is a confidence person with driven impression. So anyway, that was an artificial joke, actually. Artificial, but we'll give credit for that. All right, so real quick, I want to talk about, and I'm not going to plug in and bore you with my ugly slides, especially because I have some students here. I feel sorry for them because they have to listen to me talk, and now they're taking their free time to listen to me talk. But real quick, I want to talk about our cybersecurity program and how it integrates into this space. So essentially, STIC's or STCC cybersecurity program was started up in the early 2000s. I think around 2003 by Professor Maynard. I was working at STIC at the time as a network engineer, and it was called Internet and Network Security. There wasn't cool phrases like cybersecurity back then. Information security would have been the right answer at the time. It was happening that way. Point is, STIC's been doing it for a long time. And when they did it, it was in Building 2, for folks that are from STIC. It was in Shelley Hall. And then we had a lab. We actually had an information security lab. We had a physical lab with 40-net firewalls that were just kind of sitting there for students to play with. We had servers that were running Unix, servers that were running Windows for students to exploit, and then for those servers to get reused. Okay. I won't toot our own horn and talk about numbers. We'll come up to that. So where we are currently, all right? When I took over for Professor Maynard, I took over the more senior level classes. By the way it always works is the professor that teaches the senior more level classes becomes the boogeyman. We're the one that the lower professors say, oh, you better get your BL7 checked because that guy will torture you if you don't, right? So once I became the boogeyman and I became the more senior level, I said I'm not going to have a physical lab. What I'm going to do is I have open source software. I'm free. For any students having a ticket right now because I still use it for networking classes. But it's open source software. It simulates a network. I was using it for my cybersecurity class too. I've spun up some doctors that were running phone bank from, from various programs, nonprofit organizations that would release vulnerable servers. I would spin them up all on the local laptop of the student, okay? That takes a lot of firepower. And as we're playing with this semester, Windows, and I'm sure people in the industry right now will get ready for them to take when I say VMware, right? Broadcom bought VMware and ran it into the ground for brilliant business reasons we'll find out later. But anyway, so now we have to switch over to virtual labs, right? We have to get our virtualization extensions over to the server because we're going to run nested VMs, right? It was a lot of work just to get to cybersecurity, all right? So what I wanted to highlight now is that's what I was doing up until 3 semesters ago, okay? And what changed was Cybertrust, when they were spinning up, one thing they identified that they needed to work on was for us smaller community colleges, smaller state colleges, we needed cybersecurity, right? And we can't, if we want to train the next, cybersecurity experts, right? We need people to get hands-on experience. And in order to have hands-on experience, they need to get their hands on at least the virtual machine. So cyber range is what we needed, and for every single school to spin up their own cyber range to stay kind of a bit silly and expensive and wasteful, but also ridiculously expensive as well. And we couldn't afford it. So what they do is they license out as a central organization and then allow us to use. Right now we're using immersive labs, and that has freed me up. Okay, the amount of time I would spend troubleshooting every semester, getting my little doctor that was running Cali, but for whatever reason, the distros were out of sync, I had to re-download keys and all that. Every semester that something like that would pop up, I can now spend my time with my students. That's far more important, far more powerful, okay? Next thing I really want to talk about is about cybersecurity and students, because I know there's people here in the industry, and one of the things that kind of drives me a little crazy is when I go to, particularly if I go to a hacking conference or an information security conference, I'll say, oh, I teach cybersecurity. They're like, great, keep pumping out students. We need more people in the industry. I'm like, great, how many interns do you have? Do you hire anyone with no experience? Then I'm making them, you need to hire them, sorry, right? And I can be that jerk in my school. I'm that type of guy. I'll just, my wife wants me to quit anyway, so if they get fired, it's different, right? So, anyway, so let's talk about cybersecurity students, okay? Another point I want to make is, right now, CIT, and Professor Crouch just stuck his head in, but he also just disappeared. We teach all our classes in this space, okay? This provides a more professional level than a college. This is what you would expect to see in the private industry, right? And that's something we constantly strive for, is to get our students to act like they're at a job, okay? Because it's a frame of mind, right? We tend to have long range, particularly long range due dates, right? And I think you manage your time. Just get the job done. Get the job done, get out, right? It's kind of private industry, right? It's this kind of developing this mindset of you are responsible for you, right? And you need to act professionally, you need to send emails professionally. With that being said, I'll ask that. One of the core challenges we have in cybersecurity is, and this is something I spent one day when I was in Boston, where I was talking to Kelly, who runs the internship program for Cybertrust, and the amount of information, the vast amount of information in cybersecurity. No one here is an expert in everything in cybersecurity. Anyone that says they're an expert in everything in cybersecurity is either lying or they're a Superman, right? There's no in between, right? And anyone that's worked in the industry long enough knows their own faults, right? They know what they're not strong in. And more importantly, they know they can't know where every single button is. If they haven't used that piece of software in a year's time, they're going to fumble. The other day I was doing a lab where we were at the store, and I did it a year ago, that same exact lab, but I was putting the comma in the wrong place. Right, sorry, or actually what happened was the comma. If you used a comma, you had to use a colon. If you used a semicolon, you didn't have to use a colon. It was actually a comma. Yeah, sorry, that's fine. Right, the point is, no one can exactly nail 100% all the time, right? So we have very limited time, especially at a community college, like 2 years with students. And we have to take students who come into the program with no experience with computers. So that first year has to be OS theory. It has to be, this is how IT departments work. It has to be, this is how basic programming logic works. Okay, that's where we have to have a starting point. And it doesn't like coming to their third semester. And to be honest, for a lot of four-year schools, that third semester, I had to be jumping on Valley and making malware. Well, that was my whole list. Now we do malware analysis. Well, you're jumping in Valley, you're doing malware analysis in your third semester, right? That is a pretty good, what's the term for speed up time, or wind up time. So that leads to a couple more points I want to make. I won't go into that philosophical point. I'm going to go into the big point here. One of the biggest things we fight in cybersecurity is imposter syndrome. Okay, so there's the opposite, right? I said, okay, no one says they're an expert, right? Because it's so intimidating. But anyone entering the industry of cybersecurity, it's intimidating. It's climbing a cliff. You're looking at a cliff you're climbing, right? You should have imposter syndrome. Like I should have imposter syndrome. There's too much here, and that's why I try to convert. I'm no expert, right? But for a student who's just jumping into the industry, it looks like it's too much, right? And our particular philosophy, at least for myself, Professor Candido, is we tend to throw people into the pool. This is how you basically how to swim. Now swim. Okay, you're about to drown. You want to do this, throw back in, right? We have them jump in and do that malware analysis when they're right in the first semester. That's a bit too much, right? So we have to be very conscious of imposter syndrome, right? We have to be very conscious that how intimidating this is, okay? Particularly to students in which they don't feel the industry belongs to them due to numbers, right? So that's something we have to be very conscious of. And so ironically, I have been a bad guy and psychiatrist at the same time, right? I slap the student, I tell them if they'll be okay, right? Which some would say that's a bit kind of psychopathic to me, but it is kind of what it is, right? All right, I'm gonna just kind of leave it to that and just say, this industry, this facility provides two primary purposes, at least for as far as my very myopic view, my very tunnel vision view of what I do of training students in STCC's CIT program, is it provides a professional level environment, and it provides me horsepower and firepower to teach my students. It spins up machines that they can attack from unespoused machines. By the way, that they interface through a web client. So they can do those labs. They could be spinning up servers, they can be spinning up Kali boxes, they have multiple servers running, they could be doing NMAP over the entire network, all from a Chromebook. Okay? Unfortunately, you still, for all my students here, you still have to buy a laptop because I need to do the network simulation. So you're still spinning up VMs, you still got to use GNS30. Anyway, I'm going to wrap it up there. Okay? Any questions? I'm more than happy to talk. I'm more than happy to talk to you afterwards. I'm going to introduce our next speaker. Max and I were just talking I'm in Boston this Monday. He's had to deal with me in a bunch of Zoom sessions, so I feel sorry for him as well. And you're with Mass Cyber Center, and Max will be talking next.
Thanks, Jason.
Go.
Thank you. Listen to what he has to say. I'm not just pumping him up. A lot of what Jason just said about imposter syndrome, getting into the field, the challenges, is on point. I would say I'll give my talk and Gene putting up the slides. Thanks, Gene. From the Cyber Center's perspective, we go to events all across the state with industry, going to conferences across the country. And we hear all the time about what it takes to get into the field and the challenges of getting into the field. Before I jump into my presentation, I can distill, I think, down to 4 elements of what it really takes. And first, you need some of that academic theoretical foundation. Courses like a STIC, what you do here, your degree program, associate's degree, some of you maybe a bachelor's degree. It's really important. It gives you a basic foundation. You need, but you need more than that. You go into the field just with your academic degree, like Jason said, employers, it's not going to be enough. Certifications, they're important, but your Security Plus, that's not a gateway to a job. It's important. A lot of employers are going to look for that. But that's not going to be enough. You need experiential, hands-on opportunities. You need working in a cyber range, working with industry tools, immersive labs, but also if you have the chance to do an internship, do an assessment for a business, really get your hands dirty with what you might need to do in the job. And, I've heard so many times from employers, we were just at Akamai, which is one of the biggest cybersecurity companies in the world. They essentially do the plumbing of the internet. And their SOC director told my team, essentially if they hire you, as soon as you start with them, they retrain you. Throw out almost everything that you learned in your degree program. They need to train you on how they do things, their tools, their business. So you need that ability to learn. And your academic degree will give you that foundation, but you need to be able to continuously learn new processes. And then finally, for cybersecurity, like Jason said, you can't know everything. If you need an insatiable desire to learn, continue to evolve your skills, once you get your degree, probably in 1 year, the industry will have moved, cybersecurity will have moved a huge amount. So you need the ability to continue to learn and want to learn. So those are just a few things. I got sidetracked here, but I was fired up about what Jason said and wanted to share those nuggets before I jump into the rest of the presentation. So my name is Max Baby. I'm the Senior Program Manager for Cybersecurity Innovation at the Mass Cyber Center. And what I want to do in my presentation today is first give you an overview of the Mass Cyber Center, talk about who we are as a state agency, go into some cybersecurity best practices that will help you either personally or if you're coming here from a business or a different organization, may help your business become more secure. And some of you here in this audience very likely know as much as me about some of these practices, so you can feel free to jump in and share your thoughts on these different things. But these are the best practices the Cyber Center as a state agency regularly talks about and leverages different federal and other state organizations' recommendations. And then I want to talk about some resources we have at the Mass Cyber Center that can help you and your organizations become more secure, free and low cost resources. So Gene mentioned EOTS, the Executive Office of Technology Services and Security. They defend the state's networks. And by the state, I mean state government for the most part. Executive Office of Health and Human Services, all sorts of different state agencies. What the Mass Cyber Center does is we sit within the Office of Economic Development, and our mission is to promote the resiliency of public and private organizations in the state with a primary focus on resource-constrained organizations, municipalities, nonprofits, small businesses, organizations that need low and no-cost resources to help them become more cyber secure. We have collaborative working groups that do that. I see some folks in the audience here who are part of those working groups. That's what we do on the resiliency side. So we do not defend the Commonwealth, the state government's networks. What we do is we provide resources for the ecosystem, for businesses, academic institutions, municipalities. Innovation, that's what my job is. What this facility is kind of an embodiment of what we've been doing at the Mass Cyber Center over the last 5 years to build out this statewide security operations center and cyber range consortium that's now managed by a nonprofit organization, Gene referenced, Cyber Trust Massachusetts. The Mass Cyber Center at the state, we're not managing the day-to-day of the program. I'm not the SOC manager, I can't do that. We set up a nonprofit organization 3 years ago to run the operations, and the Cyber Center provides grants to help make the engine go. For the licensing, the immersive labs, some of the operations costs of the facilities. But we set up this program to essentially meet 4 core imperatives that we saw for the state from our perspective. The need for low and no-cost resources around cybersecurity for municipalities, small businesses, and nonprofit organizations that don't have the ability to pay market rate for these sorts of services that they need. Workforce development. There's a challenge of having folks who can get into the field, employ employers not having enough workers, but also workers with the right skills, and coming out of academic institutions or other training organizations, not necessarily with the right skills or the right experience to actually be able to be competitive for jobs. And also promoting the diversity of the field, ensuring that we're bringing in folks from all different aspects of life, socioeconomic, and all that, to make sure that we are bringing in as many people to the field as possible. And then employee training. These cyber ranges are designed as community resources. Within the Cyber Trust Consortium, there's about 13 or 14 schools that take advantage of the Immersive Labs license that Jason helps manage here, Gene helps manage. But there's only 4 schools, 4 entities that have physical facilities where community organizations like these can come in and train, upscale, promote awareness, have students physically here for team building, professional development purposes. And that's why these facilities are crucially important, and they're spread all throughout the state. Here, we're in Western Mass, we have Bridgewater State University, we have Salem State University in Mass Bay, and we're in Boston. So that's a bit about what we do. Innovation and ecosystem development. We have other workforce programs. We have a mentoring program that different SNCC students have participated in. We have some mentors here, Zach, and we have various other workforce development programs that help grow the state's pipeline, the workforce pipeline, create opportunities, and we do collaboration and outreach. It's Massachusetts Cybersecurity Month, so I'll jump into the next slide. We host a lot of events at the Mass Cyber Center, partner with different organizations to raise their profile and help with networking and ecosystem development for the state. Massachusetts Cybersecurity Month, October, aligns with National Cybersecurity Awareness Month. Raise your hand if you knew it was Cybersecurity Month. Oh, yeah, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. So in Massachusetts, we host, the Mass Cyber Center hosts one event at the beginning of the month that some folks here were at the activity at the State House. And all throughout, this is a cybersecurity month, so our goal is to really promote a culture of cybersecurity across the state and promote organizations getting involved with cybersecurity throughout the month. You can go on our website, there's a calendar of events. Students, I hear all the time, what can I do? How can I get involved? How can I meet employers? How can I find internships? Really have to be out there. Take a look at our website. If there's events, go to them. They're throughout the state. Not everyone can be here, but there's really importance of getting out there, meeting people. I probably forgot that last ingredient. You need to be out there. You need to make connections with different organizations. If you're just firing applications in onto job portals online, that won't be enough, or that will set you back unless you have an absolutely perfect resume. Which if you do, please come talk to me. So that's a little about cybersecurity. Cybersecurity from the Mass Cyber Center, we see it as people, process, and technology. Folks often fixate on the technology portion of cybersecurity, the EDRs, the sensors, the multi-factor authentication, the different technical control, the firewalls, different technical controls you rightfully need to put in place to defend yourself against intruders, protect the confidentiality, integrity, availability of information. But cybersecurity is more than that. It is people, employees, everyday citizens needing to be aware of cybersecurity so that when a phishing link comes in, you don't click on it. If you just have, you can have the best tools, most expensive tools that a corporate budget can buy, but if your employees keep clicking on all those links, you might as well just go on with that one. And then process, policies, procedures, those are really important. Incident response plans, you need those as organizations. For example, there's national regulations out there where, yes, you need to demonstrate that you have different technical controls in place, but you also have to show that you have the policies to enforce things. But just because you have maybe some sort of technical control doesn't mean you have the policy control to back it up. So people, process, technology, that's cybersecurity, and that's how we build our programs around and talk about it as an organization. Just a little bit about threats. This is a slide that we have, we talk about in the Mouse Cyber Center. We look at different threat reports in big companies, different state threat intelligence partners, FBI, Fusion Center, others, and you can kind of distill a lot of the threats that are out there, the top threat vectors, into these three buckets. Social engineering, I'm not going to go too deep into all of these right now, but social engineering threats are out there, phishing, identity. You always hear about identity as being, it's way easier if you just have credentials and just log in than trying to find vulnerabilities to break into. A lot easier to have the key and you can walk right in the door. Insider threats, so employees who may be disgruntled or leaking or stealing confidential information, or unwittingly or unknowingly not doing it. Or if anybody's heard of the North Korean IT worker threat right now, there's another example of a very common insider threat that's affecting much of corporate America. System intrusion, so attackers gaining access to network servers, computers, there's web application attacks. So a lot of threats out there right now. I'm not going to go too deep into that, but I'm happy to share with you some of the different resources that we follow at the Mass Cyber Center to help you kind of gain an understanding of the threat landscape out there. So it's really useful as a student, especially, I think, to read some of these reports, whether they're from the Googles or the Verizons or the Ciscos, some of the big companies that are bringing in billions, trillions, huge amounts of telemetry data, and they're able to aggregate that all down and come up with these reports that are easily understandable. It's useful if it's good when you read a report and say, oh, here's a vulnerability in a Cisco switch. That's nice, but that doesn't necessarily give you the entire landscape of what's out there. So I just really encourage you as students to look broadly. It will give you a really rich understanding of the whole threat landscape. It will inform your work as maybe practitioners looking at more in the weeds areas. Empowering citizens in the Commonwealth, Cybersecurity 101. So Jean asked me to talk a little about the core four. There's a lot out there that you could do to improve your own cybersecurity. So I just want to talk about some of the high-level ones and how they can help you or your business with cybersecurity. And anyone, feel free to raise your hand. You can say, I disagree with you, this is wrong, you shouldn't be doing this, or this is the way I'm doing it with my organization. And there's no such thing as perfect cybersecurity, getting to the point where there is no chance that you get hacked if your data is exfiltrated or leaked. So resiliency is important, being able to bounce back is important. But just doing a lot of these things might be enough to ensure that the hacker, when they look at you, oh, that's a little too hard, I'm gonna go. So doing this will get you a lot away there. Passwords, talks like this always start with passwords. Like I said, if you don't lock your door, you're gonna get broken, So I just want to put up a couple things here. This is a graphic. Some of you may have seen it. It's in a lot of different presentations around the time it takes a hacker to brute force your password. So if your password is SPCC123, you're up here in this purple. You're if you have a 20-string series of letters, numbers, symbols, you're more down here. I don't know if people can see this, but this is like quadrillions of years. At that point, the hackers are going to move on. That's why having complex passwords, using different passwords, not reusing passwords is super important. And you might hear from your parents, for example, or your grandparents, or your brother. I can't remember all these passwords. This is too hard. Or write them down. You go to their house and you see the sticky note right on the computer. All right, well, what if the sticky note disappears? What if the document says? Password managers, super helpful. Really great. You can find them they're in the browsers, Google, right now, or Apple, they have them now for you. Even better is if you can pay for one. I use 1Password. I think it's great, super useful. There's other ones out there, Keeper, there's different ones that you can look into. But all you have to have is one master password, and all the passwords inside it are have those long strings that are in the green box here. And when you go to different websites, you just enter your master password. If you want password, for example, it's a browser extension, plop it in, and you're good to go. So not only is it secure, it's a lot easier, because remembering lots of different passwords is really difficult, and especially when you're getting into those 18, 20 strings. At that point, people are not going to do it. We want to make cybersecurity easy for people. So password manager, extremely useful, important. Here's an example up here. We actually had it as Yankees terrible, Sox also terrible in previous presentations, but now we can play off, so I changed it. Oh, and then password importance if you're a company. I'm here not to scare you, but I saw someone else present this story that I read in the BBC. Through a simple password, a 158-year-old company is a transport company in the United Kingdom who went out of business and play a super simple password. Hackers able to get in, ransomware the company, and it so it can be a very easy vector for hackers and a huge business network. Multi-factor authentication. This is another extremely important one. You probably all know about multi-factor authentication. I would just urge it here. It's something you know, something you have, something you are. Put multi-factor on as many different accounts as possible, especially the most important accounts. So cybersecurity is all about risk, really, and managing the risks that you have. So think about if you're personally or an organization, what are the most important accounts you have? Your bank accounts, your email, and protect those. Maybe consider putting on multi-factor authentication into those. And the new Apple iOS, I'm not sure if folks are aware of this, or maybe this is around for a while and I just realized it. You could put Face ID on different apps that you have, so that if a hacker got your phone and they you didn't have a password, they know your password, they put 11111 because you only had those, so you could get it easily. And then they go to your email, they can't access it because it's Face ID. So having defense in depth, having multi-factors to get into accounts is really important. There's a lot of best practices out there around MFA that you can read about. Using authenticator apps like Microsoft Authenticator or Duo to have that second level as opposed to text-based authentication. That's a common one. You can read about some of these online, but just encourage you to have MFA on your important accounts as a business. Think about what are your important accounts, placing MFA where possible on them. There are a lot of threats to MFA too. It's a common attack out there where there'll be multiple pushes, so many pushes for MFA until you finally click yes. That's out there. So there's different threats out there. It's not foolproof, but it's a really important one to be following. Software patching updates. All right, who has on their laptop seen the little yellow button on the restart, or you get that notification that says need to restart, and you ignore it? Raise your hand. I don't. It's okay. For multiple reasons. You have a bunch of browsers open. You're busy. You don't want to take the time to restart and reopen everything. People delay updating their laptops, or different software they have. The software, and constantly, there's new vulnerabilities all the time. Hackers are discovering 0 days. Companies are pushing out, Microsoft or the technology vendors are pushing out updates to close those vulnerabilities. It's a bit of a playing a game of whack-a-mole, but it's really important to keep those devices up to date. You can't do all of them necessarily if you're a business, but pushing out ones, again, based off the risk to your business, how essential it is to your overall operations is really, really important. Ask your IT team about their patching policy. Don't delay, and you can just turn on automatic updates to so you don't have to make that decision for yourself. Backups. So if you have a ransomware incident, being able to restore to backups may be the difference between you paying a ransom or not paying a ransom. And backups, they're unchangeable, immutable backups, unchangeable. It's really important. It's essential that you back up your data, especially your important data. You can use cloud-based backups, you can use hard drives, you can use both, that's even better. You have to test your backups too. So if you don't test your backups and you can't restore from them, when you have that incident, you're gonna be out. So having backups, testing them, really important. That's something from a corporate perspective you should be aware of. Phishing, and some of these slides are up here that you can take a look at later. I'm not gonna go into every point. So phishing, just I want to highlight these 4 points on the bottom. How to identify phishing, sort of email. Too good to be true offers, false sense of urgency, looking at weird links, weird looking attachments. Hackers, especially with AI now, can easily craft extremely convincing phishing emails. So you have to be on high alert about these. They come in all the time, and it's not only email-based phishing, there's voice phishing, all sorts of ways this happens. So got to look out for some of these areas. Slam phishing is something we have at the Mass Cyber Center as kind of an approach for verifying links. Hovering your mouse over the sender, if you're revealing address, if you see a weird one, links. Also, if you see a strange looking link, you just can go directly to the company website on the URL instead of just clicking on the link. Being wary about attachments. Not a lot of times you're going to get an attachment on an email, especially from someone who you may not know very well. And then, again, checking the content of the message if it's extremely urgent. And then, so when in doubt, ask about it. A good approach is always slow down. Slow down. We all go a million miles a minute, our work, personal life. If something might be a little weird, just take a second, think a little bit, ask someone about it, pick up the phone, call, and that may be the difference between you clicking on it and not clicking on it. Phishing sort of relates to business email compromise, which is one of the biggest threats out there. And a threat that if you're especially a smaller organization, might be one that you need to be really tuned to. We talk a lot about in our work at the Mass Cyber Center, the really small mom and pop organizations. Rob, we talk about this a lot, like the pizza shop, for example. Oh, I'm a pizza shop. I don't have any confidential information or data. Why do I need to be concerned about cybersecurity? I don't have PII, I don't have data. But if you're a vendor, I just take an example, your vendor, your dough guy, someone impersonates the dough guy, sends the invoice to the pizza shop, you send out that payment, you pay that invoice out, the money's gone. That's a form of cyber attack. So business email compromise is a very advanced form of social, not too advanced, but a common form of social engineering that all businesses need to be aware of. Folks impersonating vendors to trick you into transferring funds, disclosing sensitive information, or executing unauthorized actions. So be aware of that. Again, if you get a different request to change an account, if you pick up the phone, you can call. So if you really want to change your bank account information, there's different ways to be proactive to stop business email compromise. There's a few here on this slide, but it's something that all businesses really need to be aware of. There's a lot of business email compromise out there, and it can be financially crushing for businesses who fall victim to it. Those transfers go out. There's not a lot you can necessarily do to stop it. There's some instances where if you're able to get in touch with law enforcement, they may be able to stop payment on it, but acting fast, you may not be aware of the transfer happened until it's gone. And that ties a little bit into data breaches. In Massachusetts, companies are required to report data breaches to the Attorney General's office and the Office of the Attorney General. I was looking at this data and putting together this presentation. In 2024, companies reported almost 2,300 breaches in Massachusetts, resulting in 4.44 million Massachusetts residents having their personal identifiable information. Does anyone want to guess how many residents there are in Massachusetts?
10 million.
7.2 million. And this is in 2024. 2023, that number was over 6 million. So almost everybody has their information in some way. There is reporting. You can go online and see different companies. You may have received notifications about this. If you receive a letter, check the authenticity. But that information out there can lead to identity theft and other crimes. And that's why it's really important to be constantly monitoring your accounts, to never accidentally give that, to be wary of where you put out your information. We all go to websites all the time, and they ask you for your name, your address, maybe bank account information, all sorts of things. And you may think to yourself, like, all right, this is a lot, but I'm gonna do this because I want to go use this website. I want to access these resources. Just be wary about where you are putting your information online, especially PII, social security numbers, financial information, driver's license, that sort of stuff. Be very wary about it because it could end up in a data breach, especially if you don't know how these websites secure your information. There's some guidance here if you get a report or you're involved in identity theft, what you can do. You can file reports with the credit bureaus, the Attorney General's office, FTC. Monitoring your accounts is really important in those cases. And here's the contact information for the credit bureaus. Looks like I have about 5 or 10 more minutes. Just a couple more best practices. USBs. You find a USB, even if it says SDCC is amazing, free money on this. Do not plug it into your computer. That will lead to a hack. If anybody's heard of the Stuxnet incident 15 years ago, I'm not involved in the federal government, so I can talk about this a little bit. Just public reports out there. That's what led to a USB into an air gap system, led to the worm that ended up delaying the Iranian nuclear program. USBs are used by hackers. They're dropped in the parking lot, or they're sent in the mail. Curious folks plug it in, and it leads to all sorts of mayhem. Don't do it. And Wi-Fi. Be careful about public Wi-Fis. Make sure that you are going onto Wi-Fis with passwords. I am very hesitant to go onto public open Wi-Fis. If you use a VPN, that's helpful to you. And just minimize the important logins over public Wi-Fi. And there's some easy ways to check if websites are secure. You can look, and here's a couple things that they pop up in your browser when you're browsing. You may get this pop-up here, unsafe site warning. You can go through it, you click advanced, go through, and then all of a sudden you're on a website that's not secure. You can look on the URL, if there's a lock, it will tell you if the protocol is secure. So look out for that. Make sure you're not going on typo-squatted domains, like there's a Google one, with those. That is almost so easy right now that it's not even really happening. And it's almost, things are so far advanced beyond that's like the really easy way to go about it. But make sure you maybe fonts, different sizes, really, really, really subtle things in domains that make it empty. How many of you feel like if you were involved in an incident, you would know who to call? All right, well, that's the homework for everybody. Think about it. Maybe it's Jason. No, it's Jason. If you were involved in a cyber incident, your business is, you need to have a plan. You do not want to be figuring out what to do when a cyber attack, when you're in the middle of an incident. That's going to lead to more, from a business perspective, more financial loss, longer to respond. You might lose more data, more reputational damage to your organization. So that's from a business. On the personal side, just try identifying your personal life. If you have something happen, where are you going to go? Who are you going to talk to? Maybe it's a boss, maybe it's your cousin. That will that'll help you sleep at night a little better and help you in case that something does happen. And here's some different things that you can do if you have a cybersecurity incident. Just disconnecting your compromised device from your home network, changing your password on your different, especially your important accounts, alerting your financial institution, and then just continuously monitoring your accounts for suspicious activity. And you can report to the police department, FBI. They're not going to, especially FBI or Beacon Center, they're not going to come in and be incident responders and fix your incident for you, but they may be able to help other organizations, similar ones, that they might have some threat intelligence that they can offer for you. My last couple of slides here are just about a few resources we have at the Mass Cyber Center that can help you working a little more organizationally focused. We created a minimum baseline of cybersecurity, and it's great to see that the next speaker is from the Center for Homeland Security because we have for years we've had a minimum baseline of cybersecurity for municipalities, and we recently just created one for small businesses based on 4 simple goals that if you follow, you're gonna get yourself on the pathway to cybersecurity. Train and secure employees, threat sharing, incident response planning, and having secure technology. And what we did was, for small businesses, we essentially mapped the CIS level 1, IG1 controls to some of these areas, and said if you do these things as a business, you're going to get about 75 to 80% of your risk reduced and put you in a solid foundation for having a cybersecurity program. Not only do we list some of those things out on our website, we put policy templates for those controls, and then have some public and non-profit, low or no-cost resources that you can use if you need a service provider or you need like cyber trust or an NSA or a CISA, that can help you enact those. At Mass Cyber Center, we have a grant program that provides up to $25,000 to municipalities, small businesses, and nonprofit organizations to fund managed detection and response services from Cyber Trust, Massachusetts SOC, for up to 3 years. So across the room, there is a SOC that helps monitor threats and respond to threats using Sentinel-1 commercial tool for municipalities, small businesses, and nonprofits across the state. If you're a business, this is something that you can take advantage of. You can apply to the Mass Cyber Center for this funding to get you started with the service, build it in your budget, and be off the way. So that's a grant program that we have at the Mass Cyber Center. If you have questions about it, feel free to let me know, or just go on to the Cyber Center website. And then at the Cyber Center, we have developed a card game, a tabletop exercise card game. Gene's helped us out with it a bunch of times that helps organizations develop a better understanding of what happens during a cybersecurity incident, practice their incident response plans, and really create a culture of cybersecurity. It's a role-based game based off of different cybersecurity threats. We have phishing one, we have an insider threat one, business email compromise threat one, where everybody assumes a different role within an organization, communications, IT, but IT gets a lot, legal, finance, public safety, and we hand out various injects and you have a discussion. And it really just helps raise awareness and gets the cybersecurity juices flowing essentially for your organization. And it's a really fun way to go about it. Now, phishing one, we have a fun ransomware scenario that you go through, and always at some point, the IT guy goes, all right, I quit. That's how I handle it. You can't do that. That's the only way to not fight. So I did not leave enough time. I see 2 minutes, but if anybody has any questions, feel free to fire away. Thank you for listening. Hopefully this was helpful in some way to you all.
Just a few more housekeeping issues that I did mention earlier. Appreciate nobody's cell phones going off. If you do have cell phones, you can put it on vibration mode or whatever, so we don't disturb the other speakers, and be cool. One person who's here today I did not introduce, he's gonna cringe when he realizes I'm introducing him, but the guy responsible for cybersecurity at STIC is in the house today, it's Sean Pettis right here. And I'm very pleased to introduce our next speaker, Ms. Valicia Stocchetti. She comes from the Center for Internet Security. She's responsible for a lot of the programs that we're running. She's very smart, and she's volunteered to come out here today to help us convey messages to you about the programs they're running and about sort of best practices and some sort of stats around what's happening. They work hand in hand with a lot of organizations. She'll talk a little bit about some of the programs they run. I know she is not taking any questions about the MS ISAC today. So for anybody that has anything about that, come to me afterwards and we can chat. But this is okay.
Always pressure to make sure that I can operate the HDMI. No one likes that cyber person. One time I gave a talk at a nursing home yeah. Well, all right, that's strike one. Let's make sure that we share the breaks. I promise that you will have a big I will plead the fifth that I drove here from Albany, so my brain is already worse.
She got out before the
I hope
farmers.
I get home okay. So welcome, everyone. It's super awesome to be here. I heard that this is the first official conference in this room because the interest is so kind to everyone. As a wife for an architect, I can tell you that actually is a big problem. So glad you guys got it fixed. My name is Felicia Stocchetti. I'm a senior cybersecurity engineer at the Center for Internet Security, CIS for short. We love acronyms, so I'm probably going to be very accurate by the time you go home. And I will quiz you at the end. So but anyways, my intro into cybersecurity is very interesting, and I'll use that. I want to make sure we get the meat and potatoes of what I'm here to talk to you about today. But how many people is called in the room are from a small business and not from? Okay. How many people are students? Put your hand down if you're a senior. Okay. Junior, freshman, sophomore. How many freshmen? I just want to make sure because I don't like to go over people's heads. So that helps me when I'm hearing about it. What is actually this thing to learn to your whereabouts? Make sure you know who you're talking to. Cybersecurity is 99% people and 1% technology. Having a personality, knowing how to communicate, understanding what you're talking about, and you might think you're the smartest person in the room from the subject that you're talking about. But what you have to understand is that in order to executives and C-suite people and all the people that make their thoughts, you have to get on their level, right? And so they may not be technical. But anyways, great. So who is CIS? So CIS has been around for about 25 years, I think, give or take. Yeah, actually 25 years. But we're a nonprofit, and we are based out of East Greenbush, New York, which is right outside Albany, beautiful skyscraper of the city. And we are pretty much the place to go for any cybersecurity resources, at least on a global scale. We house our security best practices, so CIS controls, or CIS critical security controls officially, CIS controls for short, and the CIS benchmarks, which is what I'm going to talk about today. We also have a subset of our organization called the MSISAC, which Jean mentioned, that stands for Multi-State Information Sharing and Analysis Center. There are multiple ISACs all across the country that do different things. There's a water ISAC, there's a financial ISAC, there's an energy ISAC, there's an elections infrastructure ISAC. So all of those ISACs, the purpose of them actually came about after 9/11. And so fusion centers kind of came out in the states, but also these ISACs started to rise up because of the needs of information sharing. So what was happening in 9/11 is that the information wasn't getting quick enough to those localities to prevent what happened. So that is, the MSISAC specifically is for state, local, territory, tribal, SLTC, acronym, or I guess they're employee, but that is who we serve for that portion of our business. And there's about 18,000 plus organizations all across the country that we help, anywhere from the state of New York down to, the little tiny little out of town that you grew up in. I grew up in Scotland, New York, so no one's ever it is like your house, lots of cows and some farms. But anyway, so that is what the MSISAC is designated to do, is to provide those cybersecurity resources and services to the state and local governments to keep them secure. So kind of like Mass Cyber Center, but for the whole country. So it's really cool for this awesome organization. I actually started with the MSISAC in I was in their computer emergency response team in the digital forensics and incident response, and then I moved over to the CIS controls team. So that is my bread and butter now. CIS controls collectively above that is security best practices, and those are the services and tools that we offer. Up on the screen, you'll see things like the benchmarks and the controls, and we feed into a series of tools and products and services that kind of rest on those two. But Secure Suite is a membership that we offer to any organization that we membership, and you get a whole host of things free. So some of the things that we have are like a SysCap Assessor Pro Assessor, which is a configuration assessment tool. That helps people make sure that the configurations are correct. And I'll get into what configurations are, and them, it's okay. We also have build kits, again, another tool in the woodshed that allows organizations to make sure they're secure. Security platform, which is something new that was released, and that is another thing. It's just a way to use how secure virtual platform so that people don't have 500 tools. Also very important for security because you don't want to go to 17 different tools in 100 different places and then all of a sudden you don't even know where they are. And then Workbench is a community-based platform for anyone who wants to sign up, and also sign up. If you have any kind of business or anything like that, just an email address, and you can get a lot of different resources from signing in there. So that's a little bit about security best practices. I'll talk a little bit about what the MSISAC offers. So they're more geared towards the operational environment. Has anyone heard of like a SIM or an EDR or SOAR? There's all different flavors of monitoring systems out there. We have the SOC right next door. We have the SOC block. So our SOC monitors the country. Anyone who signs up for our services, we have 24/7 by 365 SOC. They used to be in person and now we're remote after COVID. I guess the event cameras, I don't know the SOC, but I still get to use cameras. But yeah, so the SOC is there designated to help make sure that they have the humans behind those alerts. Right, so the tool is one piece of it, but as Matt said, the people are another piece of it, and processes too, right? So I have a tool, I have an alert, I have a human that's looking at it. what do I do? Because if you don't know what to do, it's pretty worthless, right? You have to have that process, technology, change, big step. We have other services such as managed technical response, which is a little bit more in-depth than like that over network monitoring IPS capability. We also have incident response insurance, as I mentioned that, that's the team I work on. And then we also have MDR, which is our MTD, our malicious domain reporting service, and I believe that's through Often Information. So, pretty cool stuff to do. But I've been there for less than so. Okay, somebody mentioned hashing. Max, I think you read my mind on that. This slide. So have the kind of hashing sets the world on fire. I'm big on quotes. Okay. Hashing is what's going to drive this industry and make it move. If you don't want to get out of bed every morning, you don't want to go to your house, you don't care about what you do, that's fine, it's a choice, right? But at the end of the day, you have to love what you're doing to be really, truly successful in my opinion. Otherwise, why do you do that, right? So, as a student, right, I went, my breakthrough in cybersecurity was I started as an X-ray tech, right? I was taking X-rays and I hated it. It was something my dad was like, it's the hot job of the year and you must do it. And I'm like, and I grew up on a farm, not much opportunity. So like as a parent who didn't go to college, you go where the money is, right? That's just a natural step. And so I was forced to go to that and and I went and I graduated and I did wonderful and I was top of my class and whatever else, but I wasn't passionate. So I ended up working in marketing for a while. And I was always crazy. It couldn't have been more and then I started at a company that was Sparrow. And they handed me a stack of credit card chargebacks. I hope you tell the story. I was not planning on telling the story. My husband makes fun of it. But I think it's important. So when they gave you that stack of credit cards, they knew what a credit card is, right? Because Roger cards, your credit card, and the company, the Visa, and what was happening, I found out, was when they had asked, why you have to lend it. I don't know, throwing violent at I mean, that is ridiculous. You're not paying millions of dollars, wouldn't you want to not do that? And so they said, well, do something about it. And I was like, I'm a customer service manager. Like, I don't think I'm qualified to do what you're asking me to do. They're like, well, you want to do something about it, go ahead, or just put it about it. Okay. So I went and did it, and then I started asking questions. Curiosity, and what ended up happening was this ball of fire in my brain. I found out that their configurations, settings that they use for platforms to start out with storage tags or their authorizations on the credit card were grossly misconfigured, and they were allowing like 500,000 attempts to turn a credit card, which charges you. That's how those places make money, right? You don't want to configure your system, guess what? Pay up, because that's what you're going to end up, that's how they're going to make their money. And so when I found out what was happening, I changed the configuration settings and stopped it, like almost immediately. And I ended up implementing some software into their platform, and their e-commerce platform, to stop the fraud before it moved. So after that, I ended up saying, this is crazy, and I wanted to experiment. And then I ended up learning that, and that's how I landed at CIS. It's a really weird business, but anyways, that's my shtick about passion and curiosity. But I also found these like really cool headlines in addition to my story that I thought were neat. like how autism strengthened my cybersecurity career. I hear a lot about neurodiversity. They can use a lot of their qualities as their strengths and really fuel their passion and their faith. So I thought that was really neat. Also, I like this one from bartender to MasterCard, like kudos to you, because that sounds like a cool transition. And one person from Miami Dade College, who I have no idea who they are, but they're not famous, and then also captured the flag competition at Splunk, where a person won it and then got it out of Splunk. So it's pretty cool too. So actually, Max mentioned like going to conferences, capture the flag contest, show your skills, right? Because that's how you're going to get that job. It's when you network, you meet people at conferences, at trade shows, wherever you're going on LinkedIn. Like, you know how many people I get from LinkedIn? I have no idea. I have no idea who they are. But I know from the mutual connection, I'm like, I bet you that person that I met went and told that person or 10 other people about me, and that's how that connection happened. And then they message me and they're like, hey, you got the intern. I do, sure, and I'll direct you to it. But yeah, so it's all about communication. So why are we here? Because I wrote a boring comment, right? It takes 20 years to build a reputation and 5 minutes to ruin it. And that's pretty much cybersecurity in a nutshell. One day you're flying high, and the next day some person comes in and clicks on a phishing link, and I've seen it happen when I was in forensics. They would take down an entire network, they'd call me frantically, and I would be like, well, did you have another thing? Did you have secure passwords? Or I'd be on the phone and I'd like show down their network rate, and I'd be like, you don't have better than I do, right? And I'm like, and then all of a sudden you go, oh, it's open, it cracked it, case closed. It sucks. No one wants to be on this media, right? Personally or professionally. And you certainly don't want to be personally or professionally. That's just saying. It's not a good thing for anyone. Some other obvious headlines, like 911 sensors, right? We used to say that like nobody died from the cybersecurity attack. We can't really say that anymore, right? Hospitals, we've got all sorts of emergency management preparedness organizations that use technology, right? Your police cruisers, your ambulances, everything rides on technology. And actually, I was thinking about like things I could say during this 1.5 hour ride out here. And one of the things I was thinking to myself that like really any job touches technology. There is no one job in this world on planet that doesn't touch technology in the mainstream world. Right? And that's a blessing and a curse, right? Because you've got the maintenance person that doesn't know anything about technology, but yet they are expected to operate an HVAC system that connects the Wi-Fi to an app, and then they have to protect it, and they have to know when something might be awry. And that takes skill, right? They might not have to be an expert in IT field, but they have to know when something's bad, so they can report it. So even if you're not in the cyber field, cyber landscape, I mean, we've hit on this, right? The threats are growing, and the time and resources are running out. There's not enough time to grow to protect all the things that we have. A lot of these implementations of the frameworks that I'm going to get into, they take time. You can't do everything in one day. You're not going to be able to make one policy. It's impossible. The other problem is that funding, right? Like at the state level or local levels, you have a big problem with budgets. And unfortunately, you just see it harder and harder every day for them. So that is also a problem because we're all tax-paying citizens and we all expect governments to operate, you know, how they should be securely protecting our information and things like that. So that's where CIS can help. We focus on cyber underserved. That's like our motto. And cyber underserved are just that, right? Those state local governments that really need help, or those small businesses that are drowning because they have no idea where to start. Some by the numbers, I'm not going to go over every single one of these, but you can see, like, I'll point out one, 277 days, the average time to identify and contain an incident. That's a problem. if an attacker is in your network for almost a year, probably not in your neighborhood. Also, I think the longest breach that I saw for school was years. And let me tell you, I've seen that like they have agents in there, creating accounts, rogue accounts, all sorts of stuff that you would never expect. You're like, well, how would I miss that, right? Like, I'm monitoring my network. Well, sometimes it's just the little mouse hole at the bottom of the wall that they just get it, and you don't even know it. So you can't, I think Matt said, you can't protect everything 100%. You won't try, right? I mean, you can try as hard as you want. So that it's better than doing nothing. Cybersecurity is everyone's responsibility. I already went on that shit, so I won't go on again. But it is everyone's responsibility, not just the cyber. How do we combat this as reporting? So I'm going to talk a little bit about controls and benchmarks. Hopefully I'm not too boring, but it's more like professional communication. But the controls and benchmarks, if you're trying to think about what the difference is, this is it, right? Controls are like that high level, this is what you should be doing. Say if you're like building a house, right? You should have shutters on it. You should have windows that lock. You should have doors that lock. And then the benchmarks are the low-level configuration settings, like if I have an alarm system, I want it to go off for 30 seconds before those have to go. And then by that time, you're good, if you're in fact. So those benchmarks are these very small configuration settings that are for all different flavors of operating systems. You have Linux, you have Windows, you have Mac, Android, iOS, you name it. We have network devices, which is the benchmark for. That's actually how CIS got started. The controls came on board in 2015, I think, and MSI staff came on board earlier than that, I think in the early 2000s. I can't remember. But anyway, so it started, CIS has morphed into this very well-known organization that's got a pretty cool history. The controls, like I said, they're a prioritized set of defensive actions. We have 18 top-level controls, and then, so these are things like data protection, right? Backups, things like that. And then underneath that, we have all the little, like, lower-level, do your backups at later backups, or isolate your backups, things like that, right? So if you get ransomed, you don't want to have your backups on the network if they ransom, because guess what? Your backups are out there. And then, I've seen that happen. They're like, well, I have a backup. Great, where are they? Well, they're encrypted. Like you encrypted them, or somebody else did. Hopefully it's not full. But the controls are really cool because they are consensus-based. So they're not developed poorly by us. We use a lot of industry experts like in the room and harness that power to create those best practices. We're actually in the process of doing this in right now, which is a really neat process to see. And I've been through two major versions, one minor version of the controls, and to see that version is just really cool every single time. So if you want to talk about this, I'll tell you about that. And we're also like global and internationally recognized. So actually we have a larger international following than national, which I thought was interesting. Why do we do the controls, right? There's like 7,000 flavors of frameworks out there. Just pick a different one or whatever. Really, in my opinion, the controls are a starting point for any organization. So it's not to say that those other frameworks like HIPAA, PCI, and all that are like it's not at all what we're saying. But the controls can help bridge that gap to those different frameworks. It also helps kind of translate and how should I say, like add some grit behind what you're trying to convince your executives and C-suites to do. So if you go in tomorrow and you're like, I need $500,000. Okay, great. Well, I need to implement cybersecurity. Cool. What are you going to do? I don't know. I don't know. Spend some money on it, right? Well, you need to have something to back it. So there's a framework, say, I want to start implementing CIS controls. Great. Now I know what you're going to do. Why are you going to do it? We'll get to the why. But the CIS controls really are like that security roadmap, an assessment against a third party, right? How many times have I seen that a third party hired from a company and then they get breached and they're like, oh my God, I hired this third party and they got breached. What do I do? Well, did you ask them up front, like what their security is before you signed that contract? Because if you didn't, what are you holding them to, right? You're just assuming that they do it? Well, guess what? Nobody's doing anything on their good graces anymore. Like, you've got to make sure you read the fine print, cross the T's, dot the I's, and make sure that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. So it's just a little quick graphic of what the controls look like. So these are the 18 controls, and then it's really tiny, you can't see it. This is the safeguard. I'll get, actually in 2 seconds, I'll get to what these mean. Max had mentioned the implementation groups or IGs. So my next question, I'm going to prioritize this. What if I need to comply with another framework? How many minutes for IG? Sorry. Anything that's like, it's not okay. So the implementation groups are a way that we've broken down the controls so that we can tell people how to do things more manageably. If I came up to somebody who was like, I have 153 things that I want to do, I need to do them in a computer, right? Well, there's not enough time to do all 153 things. So how do I break it down? Also, where do I start? Because if I don't know where to start, then I'm going to start at pen testing. And if I've never even incorporated my devices, then how do I right? People do that to me a lot. They're like, well, I have pen testing. Like, I want a pen test. I'm like, great. Have you done control 1 through 4? Nobody's done that yet? Okay, cool. Then don't do pen testing yet, because you're going to find a long laundry list of things you have to do because you haven't done 1 through 4 yet, right? So it all works out. So the implementation groups, there's 3 of them. I do 1, 2, and 3. And they are based on the risk profile and resources available to them. So if you're a really small mom and pop pizza shop, like your family pizzerias, you're not going to be IG3, right? Because you don't need to do IPS, pizza shop. You're probably the most prized possession you have is your money in the reverse program. But I would guess, right, with frequent fires. So make sure that you're measuring it against, like, tailoring it against you're not going to put snow guards on a roof if you live in Florida. You're not going to protect against hurricanes if you live in Central Canada or wherever. So you have to tailor your needs to what you do. Also, same thing is like, that's about risk. Like, I live in a very flood-prone area. I've seen a lot of times where we have 100-year floods every 10 years. I don't know how that works. I'm not a meteorologist. I would love to know when they know. And it's like, great. Do you have flood insurance? No, because I wasn't in a flood zone. How do you do that? But if you were in a flood zone, I think that would be it before years ago. I was in a flood zone. So it's all about risk. You waive it, you take a chance. You're never in a flood. Security compliance. So if you have to comply with other frameworks, then we can do that. So we have an in-house cartographer. He is one of our engineers, and all day long he maps to all different frameworks, from the controls to PCI, to HIPAA, to ISO 7001, to NIST, CSF, 801, all the different frameworks. And what this does is allows you to merge and overlap between the frameworks, right? Because if 5 frameworks are saying to encrypt your data, and they're like, okay, Felicia, you have to, I'm in an ISO office, information security office, and I need to implement a framework. And you're like, I need PCI because we handle credit card data, HIPAA, we handle health information, ISO because, we handle attestation or certification, and then, controls. Great. Am I gonna go one by one framework? You'll be there forever. And you're gonna have a lot of overlap. So being able to work over level over those frameworks allows you to only implement one thing once and you get credit for more. And sometimes there's differences, yeah, right? Like one might ask for 500 things from this one activity and one might ask for 3. And you have to understand your job, look at it, and say, okay, where are the notes? And the advent of AI is very interesting. I'm using AI a lot more in my job to help me with certain things, and I wonder if what's really happening to me. Because that is the hardest part. Believe it or not. So, the last question, I think I said why. Why is this important? If I came to somebody and I said I needed $500 million, right, and say why, and I don't know how to feel, they're going to say, well, what will this do? Right, that's another question. One of the things that we did is we came up with a community defense model. I worked on version 2.0, and what this is a way to explain the why you would do certain activities. So it takes a more data-driven approach, and it feeds into, so Jean mentioned MITRE. Has anyone heard of MITRE attack? MITRE attack, if you haven't heard of it, definitely study it. It's the golden standard of threat language these days. And what it will allow you to do, or what it allowed us to do, is take all those threat reports that Max was talking about, so like the DDIR from Verizon, even some of our own stuff, MSI stuff, our own data, feed them all into one source. And then what we did is we were able to translate it into MITRE attack. We say, okay, we have all of these threat reports. They say like ransomware, malware, targeted institutions, web attacks, attacks. Great. Take those. Okay, what techniques for MITRE attack today? And then feed it back into the negative controls. What do you need to do to defend against it? So then what it allows you guys to do when you're in professional setting is go to your executive and say, well, I need to implement these controls in order to defend against ransomware. Great, because I can tell you already that a lot of executives will do this. They'll read something in the news. They're like, oh my God, Felicia, ransomware is the hot new topic, and we have to protect against it like yesterday. What do you got for me? And you're going to be like, I mean, there's like 5,000 different articles out there about against ransomware. But if you wanted a book framework approach to go pragmatically about it, you can look at this and use that. So this is actually a paper that's out with mappings with it. There's data points out there. I don't have all the data points, but I think it's, I'm remembering it's 74% effectiveness for IG1 to defend against all, if you implement all IG1, defend against the top attack types, and then 80% maybe effectiveness if you do all of them, which kind of shows like you can do a lot or a little, and it'll get you a whole lot of benefit, right? Not to say you shouldn't implement the controls or anything, but it's a good starting point for it. And these are basics, right? Like, so then the whole different question is like, we could have all the resources in the world, we could have all the tools, all the stuff, but how much does it cost? Because cost is not something we have abundance for. One of the other projects I worked on was the cost of cyber defense. I went and researched 200 tools out there, went down and drilled how much it would cost, and I enterprise profiles for IG1, and said like if you're a pop shop, you know, micro business, a medium size, small, medium, or large. And I was able to put a price tag to it. And the reason this is so important is because when you look at the news, everyone's always saying like, it takes $5 million to recover from a breach. You know, the going rate now is 500, I don't know, all the numbers are just in the millions, and it's like sickening for me to read, right? But no one comes out and is like, you can prevent an attack by spending this much, right? It's similar to cyber insurance or any insurance, right? You don't know if you're gonna have it or need it. You have to. So imagine the world where you could prove that this stuff works beforehand so that you're not caught in hot water. So we went and we kind of bucketed into 10 categories, tools for each one, mapped the safeguards, and then came out with the cost. So it was hard, not gonna lie, like every tool is different, they all price differently. It is not easy. And the other thing too is like a lot of times executives are not they'll be like, oh, I have a shiny tool, like it's so cool, we need this, right? And then you get it and you're like, okay, great, but I don't know how to operate it, I don't know how to configure it, and I don't know how to use it. Well, but we have it, and so that's a check. Great, but you need to know all the other three in order for that to be effective, because otherwise the tool is just existing, and that's it. So that's why I always try to say, like, let the tool sort of not be the decider, maybe the enabler, and then the actual safeguard, like what you're trying to do, maybe, or the decider and what you do. And then these are just some of the costs. So what we kind of came up with is that we didn't do like labor or anything, just the price of the tool, because that's the only thing that's like the easiest to measure. We can't possibly predict all the salaries in the world of how much it costs and how much time goes into it, because the implementation time takes time actually implementing. So this is what we can do. So all this can be on our website. Breaking into cybersecurity field, and for my story, is sometimes takes you in a series of twists and turns. How many people want to go into a technical position? Okay. Has anyone thought about going into like cyber sales or something less technical to enjoy this access in cyber? Okay. Yeah, I mentor a lot of different students over the years, and it's interesting to see like where they want to go and what their passions are, right? Just because you go into the technical degree doesn't mean you can't do sales. I got news for you. We need both sides, and I'll talk about soft skills in a minute. Super important. So this is just all to show, like I said, every position. Opportunities. So you can go public, private, public, but I am now in a position. I never joined CIS because it was a nonprofit. I found out it was a nonprofit after the fact, mission driven, and it really makes me excited to move on. You can start your own company, that, right? Technical books. I've been a couple of the people who solicit my knowledge and then put me in with a customer, which is kind of cool. Public speaking at conferences, speaking to the media. I've been on the news a few times. That's terrifying. Listening to the video. I felt like I couldn't move out training the next generation, which is what I hope to impart on all of you today. And I encourage you also to connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm really easy to talk to, and I am hopefully a wealth of information for people to pursue their own careers. Book bounties, that's full of like hacking and breaking this stuff. People love to find it. Sometimes you get paid for it. And you don't need to have a job to do that, right? I can do this. And then developing tools. So like, does anyone want to be a developer or programmer or any kind of engineer? Okay, yeah. Your group, let me tell you, I cannot program my way out of a beamer tag. It's just not my forte. I use AI now. Nice. Or an AI. I have You might know about them. Anyways, bottom line is that you do a lot of fun stuff. Internships, as early as possible, as often, and variety is key. So like, you don't have to stay with the same internship for 4 years. If you want to, when you go to years to work, super, do it. But if you're not sure, go for the variety, because by the end of your 4 years, you're gonna be like, oh, okay, cool, now I think I want to do this instead. I thought I wanted to work for the FBI. I don't know. And I'm also doing it. So, that's a sad thing. But anyways, my point being is that make sure you can build internships. And also, even if you don't work in the technical field, and say you like can't get an internship, the well is dry, whatever, like go get a job, right? Like go get anything, because any of those skills you learn, customer service, sales, anything, it helps, right? Having skills helps, whatever they are. I mean, my previous careers helped me so much in my career. Actually, marketing is the biggest one. There is a lot of people who do not understand how to get things to market, right? They're brilliant, they can produce the content, they can do everything, but to take it through to execution is sometimes really difficult. And having that holistic mindset of like, I'm writing a product, and at the end, who am I writing for, right? Remember your audience. That's key. And then the soft skills, like I said, there's, I mean, you guys probably, you're tweeting and DMing and I don't even know, all Steam, I don't know any of that stuff, so like, I am the oldest woman on earth when it comes to social media. I have Facebook and that's about it. I think I have an X account, like, I don't know. I definitely don't have an Instagram account. But anyways, my point being that if you're on social media, use for good use, right? Don't just scroll through mindlessly and garbage that will enrich your life. Go on, look at threats, reports, go on and look at what experts are saying, like running threats, like go on and look at that stuff. Because honestly, sometimes you see things emerge there before the big people even hear about it. Like that's happening. So, it's my last slide.
You're good.
Soft skills. Albert Einstein is my name. We share a birthday, so that's fun. My favorite quote: "We cannot solve problems with the same thinking we use to create them." Right? We need to be smarter than our predecessors, and that's just how we get more forward thinking. That's how we get innovation. That's why AI is so much voted like insane lately. But the other thing is focus on your soft skills. You can be the brightest person, but if you cannot communicate something to your counterparts, it is not helpful. You can't get through things without communication, unfortunately. So if it's a thing that you hate, if it's like public speaking that you hate, try, right? At least try to break through some of those barriers to develop in the long run. I'll tell you, 10 years ago, if I had to speak doing this in front of people, I would be, you have to bring me down. It would be disgusting. And I would shake and I would black out, basically. And I remember the very first time somebody was like, you're going to go to Washington, D.C. and talk about a NATO at a conference this size. I'm like, no. They're like, yes, you are. I was like, no, you don't understand. I'm not. And they're like, yep, you are. And guess what? Then I was on a plane to Washington talking to NATO. And it was terrifying. And I definitely thought about that. But I learned a lesson because they said, media won't be there. And I'm like, oh, great. I don't care if I see being stupid now. Well, let me tell you, somebody from the media snuck in and they wrote an entire article about me that I clicked on a phishing email as the search manager. And I was like, 2 years into my career, I wanted to die and crawl under the I could not be more embarrassed. And I didn't even know it until somebody at work came in and was like, oh, great article. I was like, huh? Like, what are you talking about? And then I went and I was like, quickly Googling myself. I was like, oh, you gotta be kidding me. I was like, somebody was at that conference. And yeah, so But anyway, I'll take any questions if there's time. Otherwise, I think I was intriguing to most of you. I think I saw some faces that looked alive, so I appreciate it. It's never fun to talk to when scared. That's all I have.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Okay.
So I'm gonna set this back up, but while I'm doing that, why don't you guys stretch your legs, talk to each other, grab another water in the hallway, if you know there's water in the hallway, put some in. But feel free to move about while we hear the next speaker on the
Oh, thank you. Everything you were thinking
Hi, how are you? You found it.
Because I was like, with my classmate, it's like, can you give me a ride instead of taking the bus?
Yeah.
And she said, oh, come on. And we go, for the back,
Yeah.
and we saw the cop, and she asked, oh, it's the cybersecurity right there. And I said, I'm blind, I can't see. And he said, you can go inside. You're from STC.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
That's great. Yeah. Well, I'm glad you found it.
Yeah, it was not sure. It was like, for me, it was the first time I go inside.
Yeah.
Because I just go to the outside to check, to check it for the bus,
Yeah.
For me, this side, I was like, what is it? I cannot see. And he said, you see a little thingy? Now you say the thingy. Okay, I'll find it. Thank you. And he said, but yeah.
That's good.
And my question is,
Yeah.
they gave me the certificate one, right? The cybersecurity, right?
I would ask Gene or Austin. I can introduce you to him.
John, whenever you're ready, calls in the room. With the podium. Hey everyone, we're about to get started again. If you can grab your seats. Love the networking that I'm hearing. It's awesome. Feel free to contribute to the board too if you want. So it's great to see all of you here. For those of you that stayed through all three speakers, that's awesome. One of the things I want to share with you real quick is we also have permission from the schools to start a meetup here in Western Mass. So right now, if you're familiar with meetups in cybersecurity, it's a bunch of people that get together informally, go over common problems, new threats, collaborations, networking, helping with jobs, helping people unemployed with jobs, that sort of thing. We're going to start them here, the 22nd in the evening. There will be evening sessions from 5 to 7. We're going to do it once a month, so keep an eye out for that as well. If you register for this, you'll get information in your email about it. But rather than having to go up to Boston to do something like that, or Cambridge, we're going to be doing them here in Western Mass. We have a lot of business support for that as well. So feel free to join in. Even if you just want to be a wallflower for a little bit and kind of figure things out, that's fine. Feel free to come on in. With that said, I'm delighted to introduce our next speaker, Paul Nislusen. Paul and I worked together in the past at a place that was responsible for agricultural banking. So if you think about farmers here in the United States, they need special funding to be able to operate through their spells, right? Good spells, bad spells, they need funding for that, $1 million of equipment. So Paul was responsible for risk management and cybersecurity, among other things, at a facility here in Springfield, managed all the way over to Spokane, Washington, down to Fresno, Madera, California, across the United States. He does some really other cool things, but I'm going to let him talk about that a little bit. Pay attention to him as well. The three speakers you're hearing today are really key speakers to kick this off. This is our first session here this year. It's our first session here ever. So feel free to let them present, and then stick around for any questions you might have with any of the speakers. We'll have a little bit of a networking session afterwards informally. But without any further ado, Mr. Paul Missus.
All right, guys, let's start this out by saying, if you can't hear me in the back, I'll probably be just yelling the whole time. So if I get too quiet, let me know, I'll go over the microphone. This was initially put together for a whole bunch of businesses, talking about risky business and cyber risk. And by a whole bunch of businesses, I mean, I presented this in 2017 initially at, if you're familiar with NIST, National Institute of Standards and Technology, Science and Technology. NIST, whatever they are. I expected nobody to show up. Right, I expected there to be like 4 people politely clapping in the front row. I ended up with a standing room only crowd. I was shocked. And the reason being that when we look at what we do, we think about security as being super, super important, but we're trying to figure out how we're supposed to put it together in the context of business. And so I think that for folks who are here who are either at the beginning phases of getting into cybersecurity as a career, or folks who actually are business owners and things like that, I think it's important for you to recognize where cybersecurity actually fits in the bigger scheme of things. So let's start with who am I and why should you listen to me? I'm not really sure. But I'm here, so since I'm in the front, I've got the microphone. I guess you have to. I've been doing this for over 20 years. I've been a cyber warfare officer for a number of years, still doing that. In my corporate jobs, I've been a chief risk officer. I've been doing stuff from penetration testing all the way through consulting with Fortune 10 companies, trying to help them understand their cybersecurity posture and the cyber risk better. So I kind of know what I'm talking about, and hopefully I'm not boring and we can get through this. All right, so target audience, new security practitioners, business owners. Why? Because cybersecurity is business function. So this is super important, and I'm sorry if I cut you guys up, so I'm standing on the wrong side of the pole. Let me know. So cybersecurity is a business function. The reason why I bring this up first and foremost is that when I was raised doing cybersecurity back in the late 90s, early 2000s, before dinosaurs were even here, we were taught that security is super important. You're supposed to basically be somebody with a shield to stop the most bad stuff from coming in. The problem is that also stops the business from going forward. The most secure computers are the ones wrapped in concrete from the body of the user. Nothing is going to enter that thing. The problem is nothing's going to get into that thing. That includes the users, that includes the customers, all that sort of stuff. So over the years, we kind of evolved this perspective that security, as much as we want to be the guardians of the business, guardians of the business is how the business is flow. Business's job is to make money. Okay, so we protect assets, and yes, we ensure regulatory compliance. But we're supposed to optimize resources and processes that go into that. So let's talk about this. Risk. Take as much risk as you can, but no more than that. Fun fact, I climb mountains for fun. I'm fat fun, which is slightly risky because that's what I actually This is me halfway up the mountain, where we've got the first point where I'm anchored to the side of the rock with crevices, a little piece of metal jammed in there, anchored to 2 or 3 locations. My buddy shot this picture. Probably about 400 feet up there, there's another mountain behind me. Is that risky? Yeah. Well, why did I do that? Why was it okay that I was doing that? I mean, YOLO, don't get me wrong, right? Because I was scared to some greater or lesser extent. But there's risk management involved, right? The most secure person, the person in the parking lot going, no. But they're not going up the mountain, right? The business is moving forward. So you've got to take calculated risks, okay? So I'm tied off in 2 or 3 different places, but I didn't stay tied off in 2 or 3 places the entire time on the mountain. It was like, as I got up, I would secure myself when I stopped, sit down and have a sandwich. But when I'm going up, it's just one road. Here's the thing, technically speaking, you don't need a road to climb a mountain. While I was climbing up there with my buddy Tom, we saw somebody who was free soloing on the other side of the cliff. I've done some free soloing. It's not a great idea, okay? Because you die. But he took a risk calculation, and I hope so. He succeeded in, making a lucky risk calculation based off of his knowledge of his skill, the risk that he was facing, and it was a nice day, and all that sort of stuff. Problem is, You only need to make a mistake once, right? So you gotta be careful about that sort of stuff. So let me bring back to cybersecurity. Cybersecurity is not an IT concern, it's a business risk. Risk, we need to figure out what the working definition is for that, okay? What are we talking about when we talk about risk? Because a lot of people like to use the word risk as a buzzword. Oh, it's risky. Well, what does that actually mean? Risk in senior leaders. How does that actually apply when you communicate with senior leaders? And especially for folks who are coming into the security field anew, or brand new, or even business leaders. If you own your own company or for a senior leader within a company, you're probably trying to figure out how to understand what these words are saying. And that's actually the biggest focus of our career goals, the ability to communicate. Because I can go out and I can sit there, I've actually done this, I sat down with the CSO of a meeting power company. I described everything that's wrong with them, he's staring at me like this. This is thank you. I said, I downloaded 800 gigs out of your firewall. He said, what? That can't happen like you did, I got a picture of it. Oh, walk out. Come back 3 minutes later, it's like, that won't happen again. Because we can boil it down to something that they can put their hands on, they can understand, that clearly communicates the value to them, that is invaluable to you as a communicator. So this is another risk perspective. This was not 400 feet up. This was 20 feet up. This was in my backyard. This was me being bored at the end of the night and being fidgety because I couldn't go ice climbing. And because at the end of the day, this, when it comes to it, your time. Well, so this is the problem. Believe it or not, fun fact, the best place for ice climbing in all of Massachusetts is the Upper Ice Canyon. There's something that was drilled out years ago, and there's actually water spill that comes in here, and over, then you go through, and you can set up, you can climb like 40, 60 feet. You can have top rope, so it's already really low for security. So I'll talk about that all day, but that's not why we're here. But a good question. So I live in Sturbridge, next town over from Auburn. And I was going to go over there, I'm like, oh, I got just enough time. And I didn't have just enough time. Well, I pulled my gears out. Well, you know what else axes are good for? Trees. So I went up back and I was like, I called a friend of mine who's actually a forester. I'm like, hey, if I put my ice axes into a tree, is I going to damage the tree? He's like, no, they can handle it. You just don't do it every day for like the entire winter. I'm like, okay. So I put on my grammars, put on my ice axes, put on my helmet, put on my leg because it was night time. And I climbed 20 feet up into a tree. Success. There's no rope involved. You can't tie off onto a tree really, unless you get a branch. Then you have to get down. There's no plateau, there's no like particular path down. So despite the fact that this was only 20 feet, not 400 feet, this was a stupid idea. I ended up jumping out of that tree from about 15 feet up, landing my crampons, and fortunately didn't impale myself on anything in the ground that I couldn't see. Right? So it's not about whether or not something appears to be risky, it's about what the actual risk is based on the environment that you're in. Okay, so mathematically, because everybody loves math. How bad is something? Multiplied by the chance that it's going to happen. That's what risk is. If we got hit by a meteor right now, we'd all be dead, and that really sucks, right? But the likelihood of that happening is pretty close to zero. Now, if we had somebody who was not supposed to be in here, wandered in through the front door, the likelihood of that happening, I'd say it's pretty high. I'll say 75%. Those doors aren't secured. But the likelihood that's going to have as catastrophic impact as a meteor hitting us, probably pretty low. Right? So we're not really securing either of those, and that's not really what we need to worry about. We're looking at the risk, the likelihood, and what the outcome is. Okay? What does this mean from a cybersecurity standpoint? It's a trade-off. It's a trade-off between flexibility and safety. Okay? We can wrap this entire building in concrete. We could wrap this entire facility, this room in concrete. Nobody's getting in. But can you get in? Can you do anything? Not really, right? So the whole idea is you have a lot more flexibility having that door open and not having to go find somebody to unlock that door for you. Likewise, if you really do need to have that security, it's really good to have last year. So if you ever get into risk management, stuff like that, this is the testable kind of stuff. You're not going to test on myself, I promise. These are things you can do with risk. And you will see this over and over and over again throughout your career. You can accept, mitigate, transfer, or overcome. Transfer of risk is when you have that security guard sitting out front, you're paying them to secure you. you're not secure yourself. You're not sitting there strapped inside out. You've got somebody sitting on the front taking care of it. If you accept it, you're like, yeah, we're not going to put a security guard up there because we probably don't need that. So we're just going to accept that there's a chance that could happen. Okay. Mitigate it is, okay, you get somebody can come in here and lock the door. Into the door. Or you can avoid it. Well, you know what? I'm too worried about somebody walking through this door. We're just not going to do this today. Not really useful. But sometimes it's the right thing to do, right? If it's I could be driving through Springfield at like 11 o'clock at night, top down and money hanging out of my car. It'd be a good idea. Maybe a risk I could avoid. You're just stable. All right. So you'll probably hear me say risk is money a few times. Let's start with the top and why it matters. If you own a company, your goal is to make money. That is literally the point of having a business. Otherwise, it's a charity. Okay? So if somebody says, well, I'm really doing this with people, we do it with people, make it a charity. But if it's a profit enterprise, your goal is to make money. Okay? Reduction of losses is a component of that. Here's the thing about cybersecurity. There's not a single thing you can do in cybersecurity to make money for your company, unless you're selling. That's not security, that's sales, right? If you're securing your company, what you're actually doing is you're keeping the company from losing money, right? It's sort of like, if you have like a leak coming out of your car, you lose the gas. You can't do anything to add more gas into your car, but you can put some tape over it, flex seal, forget it, whatever, right? So that's kind of what we do. So if you have something where it's going to cost $75,000 to fix something, but it's going to save you $100,000 in the long run, well, you actually just saved the company $25,000. That's the delta between how much you paid to do it, etc. What I don't think that you should do, because I saw this, I had it was an embarrassing place for me to sit with the CIO sitting over here and his subordinate, the CISO over here. And I was asking them about their security controls and what they had purchased. And they were talking about how they didn't have the budget, they didn't have the personnel. And then they talked about the system that they had spent $10,000 on and they didn't have enough budget. I was like, okay, cool. Well, how many people do you have working that, manning that? I said, we haven't set it up yet. Like, you have a $10,000 software license, right? And you see where I'm going with this, right? And they're like, well, we figured if we bought this software, maybe they would give us the money and the personnel to use it. Okay, so what you did was you wasted $10,000, now you gave the report to hire somebody. So let's not do that. So when we talk about risk management versus traditional cybersecurity, okay, you want to make the owners happy. That's your job. And you fund cybersecurity to decrease risk, which is different from decreasing all your vulnerabilities. We'll get to that a little bit, right? Because it used to minimize vulnerabilities, which is I've got 1,000 CVEs. Show of hands, who knows what a CVE is? Cool, a lot of people. For people who don't know what a CVE is, basically, it's stuff that you kind of throw out there if you find a vulnerability, you're supposed to say there's a vulnerability in the software, you should be careful. Rabbit trail on that. I was just sitting down with a CTO of a very large software company, and one of the problems with CVEs is this. Somebody said, because we're trying to make it and stuff, you publish a CVE with your name attached to it, you've got credit for that. The problem with that is, people want to do that to get credit for that, even if it's not really that bad. So this major software company had a 9.9 CVE. Oh my goodness, that means that somebody take over the whole business. So they had their engineers get on that. When they looked at it, like, okay, so you have to compromise this system and this system. Then you have to be under your saying that then this could potentially be leveraged to do this. That's not a 9.9. From a risk management scale, it's probably closer to 5 or 6. Right? So CVE, if you chase after every CVE in the world, you're going to be chasing forever. A friend of mine recently was talking to some cyber insurance companies and said, how many vulnerabilities are you actually chasing after? Like, if you were to look at all of them, are you seeing like these thousands upon thousands of CVEs? Are people coming in? Like, are you firefighting constantly? And the insurance companies actually said, anyone have a guess? How many do you think they're actually chasing across the entire world? 300 total. Approximately 300 total. We're talking about multiple billion-dollar enterprises across the entire world. In general, cyber insurance companies are paying out about $300 billion. Some of them are over 17, 15 years old. So should you be chasing after all of them? No, you should be focusing on what's actually presenting risk to your enterprise. Okay, minimizing vulnerability as cyber practitioners, right? So senior leaders, they're trying to make sure that they're presenting the best thing that they can from an economic standpoint for the company owners. Cyber practitioners, we're all speaking binary. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, good morning, good afternoon, sorry, I'm Diana, sorry I came in late. Did you just express what the acronym that you're saying? Is it CVE or CVE?
Common Vulnerability Enumeration, I think it stands for.
Okay, so it's CVN?
CVE.
I'm sorry, can you say what it means?
Common Vulnerability Enumeration?
Yeah.
Yes. So it's basically like, I found a vulnerability, let me position this in a common format that everybody else in the security community is familiar with. It was, if you're familiar with MITRE, I think they basically found a kind of like headquarter the whole CVE thing. There's a funding up there for that. I'm not sure if it's true. But anyway, that's kind of the common standard for where people look at vulnerabilities.
Thank you.
Yep, no problem. Which is different from virus total, so a whole different rabbit hole. Okay, so this is senior leaders are trying to communicate their cyber risk up to company owners. Cyber practitioners, we're all down here speaking binary. I'm going to my boss going, oh my gosh, look at this. We've got this huge blah, blah, blah. And my boss looks at me like I'm speaking a different language. He has no idea what I'm talking about. I give him this lengthy 16-page report, which he doesn't care about it because he doesn't even understand what's an executive summary. That's what we're trying to prevent here. I mean, I would say that you're all normal people, but if you're my people, then you probably are. But you can try to be more like normal people so they understand what you're saying. That's the whole idea. Okay? So, back to the pictures. Maximize your risk outcomes. Take on as much risk as you can, but take not too much. Okay. How it helps. Make sure that your priorities line with business objectives. Because at the end of the day, your company is here to make money. They're not here to secure itself. It only secures itself when it makes more money. Financial grounding of cyber risk has security practitioners and business mindset. That sounds really dirty. So much simpler. If cyber risk equals money, then cyber risk equals business. This isn't how we were raised. It's not how I was raised. It is how you should be raised. Cyber risk translated into financials allows non-security leadership to make informed business decisions about cybersecurity expenditures and focus areas. Again, dirty talk. Hey, geez, what the heck are you talking about? I have no idea what you're trying to communicate to me. That's what that is. If risk equals money, business leadership understands it better. I need you to give me $50,000 so I can save you $200,000. Okay, can you prove it? I can show you that this is the risk assessment based off of what we're facing versus what we're going to spend. Cool. Have your money. So this is where we're going, right? So this is historical focus was reduction of vulnerabilities. But again, you can't reduce all of them, and sometimes it's just not worth it. Reduction of attack surface. Attack surface. How exposed are you to the outside world? Okay, that's important. But sometimes you need exposure to the outside world. Anybody here ever been to a website? Because you can reduce the attack surface by turning it off, but it's probably not what you want to do. Technical controls are great. But I will tell you that if you talk to the standards agency, and I've talked to those who actually write the standards, and they're writing standards myself and policies, that's a baseline. When you see a standard is usually meant to be set out, controls are meant to be set out to apply to as many people in the organization as possible, right? So it doesn't matter if you're in banking, it doesn't matter if you're in farming, it doesn't matter if you're in high tech. If you look at the 853 standards, okay, sure, those are going to apply, controls are going to apply across the board. But there are things that are unique to you, and unique to your layout, and your organization, and your enterprise. You've got to tailor all those things. It's a baseline, it's a place to start. Let's go back to risk focus. It looks easier when it's not. How likely are you to be targeted? How accessible is the vulnerability? You're going to look at all the things like how hard, how severe it's going to be. Don't forget reputation. Because when you take on more risk, there's a greater likelihood that you're going to get compromised. But at the same time, it could be that you have a higher risk of reputation loss for certain things. And other things we surround. Okay. A note about standards. This is something that is just a soapbox. I threw this in here completely unrelated to my previous one because I temper tantrum about this all the time. Standardization is super important. And we all want to be really good. We all want to be the best. We want to be the smartest person about technology. We want to be the most insightful on our technology. We want to be those people who close more tickets or get more volume than everybody else. I'm guilty of pretty much everything that's up there, as are my colleagues and the best of my colleagues. The problem is, the problem. If you're closing out twice as many tickets because you're working 10, 12 hours a day, that's wrong. For two reasons. One, your family probably misses you. Your kids or your cat. Right? So I have all of both. But the other part is it skews metrics. So Gene's my boss, and he says, I was giving you an actual person, but I can see that you're closing out like 30 tickets an hour. I need to close out 30 tickets an hour, and working 8 hours a day, so that makes what? 40 tickets a day. Cool. All right, well, he closed on 250, so I think we're good. But what he doesn't know is I'm working 12 hours a week and a half. So he's not going to need resources. I'm not going to do standardized data like that. Sometimes you can analysis find lots of problems with 30% slower. They're a great colleague of mine, brilliant. We used to work with in the past, and he was that guy. He did a lot less work. The stuff that he did was incredibly complex and very insightful. But at the end of the day, he wasn't doing what business needed him to because he was doing 30% less work than anybody else. And at the end of the day, if you've got, I'm not going to do any more than that in public, I don't think. Let's just say that you're behind on like 400 tickets a week, right? Because you're getting that to one site. Guess what? You might have found something that's incredibly important, but those are 400 that probably have nothing to do. Right? So there's a broader perspective on that. So you could be putting additional scrutiny in at the standard work rate, but resulting in more findings. Okay, so you're super insightful, but now you've created more problems. Okay, judging based on personal assessment rather than discrete standards. He's a really smart guy. I'm not smart. He's going to put things to what he considers to be the appropriate standard. I'm going to put to what I think is, not me. Well, here's the deal. If I'm looking at something like, all right, I have a discrete standard that says we're using TLS 1.2 or not. And if the answer is no, then he's like, well, you're using TLS 1.1, which is not a big deal, and it's actually deprecated, but we can probably, at least you have some encryption, somebody would actually have to compromise that path, and then, you have to be targeted, so the risk management calculus kind of makes it not so much of a risk. And at the end of the day, he says no. Okay, cool. So let's just say that 50-50 split. If things a decent site we're going to see, and I'm not so that means that at the end of the day, say we're doing 800 tickets a piece, end of the week, we've got half of them, he's a judge, 400 kids, he passes. 400, I say, or he passes, and I say, no, you're not going to. Eventually, you're going to have a huge split between two things that are identical in capability. Some are approved, some are not approved. And there's no way of really saying how many vulnerabilities do you have? Well, 2. Or your team, you have half the things, I thought. So you got to have a standard. So, non-standardized assessment of critical risks on the assessor. Okay. So this brings us back to this. Here's the thing: when somebody says, "He's my boss," and he says, "Paul, okay, I need you to make a risk determination here." Okay, cool. Well, what are our criteria? We don't have any. I mean, you're a senior person. I hired you to be the smartest person in the room on this. I need you to make it. Okay, well, this is standard. What's the risk factor? What are your criteria? And he says, I need you to come up with that. I'm like, okay, well, this is what I think it's more. So, okay, that sounds good. 2 years from now, I'm great. She comes back. Why did you do that? I said, because, well, I said, well, that was a really bad choice. Great. You're fired. Great. That's my standard time, because of the tax meeting. And bringing this back to the business, all these things boil up to, how are you funding your cybersecurity program? Right? How are you funding your people? How are you supporting your people? Because it's not just about dollars and cents, it's trying to support your people do the best that they can. So if you can actually standardize processes, you can optimize your business and support your people at the same time. Okay, finite resources. This is interesting. I've heard government organizations go, oh, I'm not funding, so I'm not worried about the bottom line. Really? You don't have a budget? Like, when I go to the grocery store, I know what my budget is, right? So you can't tell me that the government's like, oh, we have infinite bottom line. If that were true, that'd be fantastic. And if there's anybody here who doesn't have a budget, let me know. I'm not looking for a job, but it sounds like you're the right person for me to talk to. So you got resource hours can be converted, hardware can be converted, try and turn everything into a dollar figure. That is what business speaks to, money, period. You might be surprised at the results. And this is more of the business owner. You do all these risk calculations, I have seen it. I worked with a guy who gave me the risk assessment, was like, that's wrong. I'm like, no, this is an empirical standard based off of industry standards. We need to spend more money on this, less money on this. He said, that's a waste of my time. I don't know why I paid for these people to do this assessment. I'm like, you paid tens of thousands of dollars to a third-party company to come and give you an assessment and tell you where you need to optimize your business. You're choosing not to. There's does anybody here write at all? Write books, stories? There's, and I presume most of you are literate. Stephen King wrote a great book about writing called Operating. In it, he says, kill your darlings. Which means take a critical look at things that are important to you personally, the things that you love, the various use, the things that you don't want to get rid of, and determine whether or not you actually need those programs, those processes. I don't say people because I like to keep that people. But make sure that you're keeping a critical eye on those things that you have your prejudices towards or against, because they may be the things that save you. Okay. This has nothing to do with, this picture has nothing to do with that. I just thought it was a cool picture. I'm going to tell you a story about this, about students who choices on my part. So this is at the summit, that mountain that I climbed. And what's that? It was called Seneca Rocks in West Virginia. Fun fact, more mountains in West Virginia than any other state in the nation. So we got to the summit of this particular mountain. And there's a little hole you can see through. That's actually where you go down, right? Where he is. He's anchored into that mountain. So, but for whatever blessed reason, he decided to bring 3 people who never caught before. So my buddy Tom and I, we were kind of like hanging out there for a half hour, 45 minutes. So you can go around if you want. There's nowhere to go around. But there is. There's a called rat hanger, repel hanger. It's around the corner from there on a little ledge. But because they were taking up all the space, there's just basically there's something called stemming when you're climbing, which is you put your hands here, here on this side, and you're kind of like, so for whatever brilliant reason, Tom and I decided that we're going to stem all the way out to this wrap hanger, wrap like the sapling, top over. We're about 600, 700 feet, right up the sheer face. Not a brilliant idea. Bad risk decision. It paid off, but not a good idea. So. But the question is, when you talk about business, I try to pretend that I had a business lesson in here, but I really don't. Is that sometimes those risks are calculated, and sometimes you get lucky, and sometimes you fall. Okay, so we've been talking about critical success factors, challenging opportunities, core challenges, cognitive strategies, resources, development prioritization, the need for intelligence driving. You guys still with me?
Yes.
Sweet. All right. So we're talking about other things. This is we're calling out the other side. This is Tom. Part of the reason I was down before Tom, even though we were going at about the same pace, is we got to our first. This is called a multi-pitch, which means that you go to the end of the road and then you have to let your rope go, and then you got to reset it again because you're so far up, and you have to do that a few times to get to the bottom. We got after the first pitch, we got to the second pitch. I'm like, you know what? You're going too slow because the thing that you have is that you're propelling with is supposed to bind up so that you don't move too fast. Probably a good idea, right? And so I flipped mine upside down, which allowed you to do. It makes it go faster. I don't know this before, I just know it makes it go faster. It went faster.
How much faster?
It went a lot faster. It was terrifying. So I was lucky, okay? That's the top, that's not lucky. I was lucky because I made it safely, I figured out how to slow myself down a little bit. And how eventually lower himself down. It was good. There was a father and a son who were rappelling off of a face that was about 200 yards to the left of the ceiling. Father and son were doing something on the side of the rappelling, which is you go down the same side and you try to counter to the other side. And so as long as both are going are there, they both go on the same speed and fall too fast. Now go down to the bottom faster. Well, you know, we have to stop around the bottom, hold on to the roof. That's not that long. So I see the cat came down, landed, got his feet on the ground, and was went real big loose, and the sun came plunging his neck. So, cool sunshine and roses. The point being that you take risks. And sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't. Okay, critical success factors. How are you going to make this actually work? I mean, especially when you talk about your junior folks or folks who have a business. Junior folks, this is challenging for you. You can't be an evangelist on your own doing this, right? You say, I'm going to build a risk-based program for my company. You will fail. When you visualize it, you can build consensus, you can build a plan, you can socialize it through your leadership. I've done this unsuccessfully in companies, where there have been people give me the very brave and sage nod of their head, oh yes, that's a great idea. Never heard of them again. They never did it, they never bothered. It was too much work, it was too much effort, they had to stop about something shining, it happens. But what I didn't do was go out and build a program. Because that is, if we do our resources, not worth my time. And the company was not going to help me do it. That I would be doing in my spare time, or I'd be wasting their time. So senior leadership buy-in is super important. If you are a leader, if you have a company, or if you're a senior security leader, or you're a business leader, you need to make sure that you're fully embraced with the idea that you're going to go forward with this, and figure out how you're going to make money and excited about it, right? Because you are going to save money, and you're going to be able to optimize where you spend money. All right. Long-term commitment. Run wasn't done today. It was neither of the risk management program. And you've got to have a clear focal point. When everybody's in charge, nobody's in charge. And that doesn't really get stuff done. Budget. You got to have money for this. These things aren't free, right? I mean, extra work isn't free. Your time isn't free. Budget includes all sorts of resources. It includes the computers themselves. It includes the people hours that it takes to make things happen. And you've got to recognize that there are other things that will not get accomplished because those resources are being diverted to something else. And then you think about the bigger picture. How do you grow? Like, how does your company work? You grow through mergers and acquisitions, localize your business, you buy more stuff. How does this fit into your calculus as you move forward? And even as a cyber nerd, you're looking at this stuff, and you're like, well, this doesn't really apply to me. I'm not building a business. Yeah, but you are, because as you secure this piece, and this piece, what happens when you start out working on healthcare and then you start working with farmers? Probably a different problem set. Some more shared lessons learned, but you don't want to put them all in one place. Okay. Resources often spend in duplication of efforts in time. If you're working in a place where you see there's like, and this is a great thing for folks who are at the junior end, but paying attention to things around them. They're doing this, they're doing this, they're doing this. I'm doing this too. I think the only one to do this. I'll take that away from them. People are always willing to do it. Just make sure you talk to your leader before you go telling them you're going to do something else's job. But if you can actually find places where work is being duplicated or effort is being duplicated, you're saving the business money, but also from a professional standpoint, making a pretty good name for yourself because you're the person who identifies problems. Controls-based approaches we have now. We talked about that already. And I say we because I'm the one talking here, but I pretend that we're having a dialogue. That's great. You have gaps. Controls-based assessment is you have a binary question. So if you're not familiar with control basics, are you using this? Yes or no? Are you doing this? Yes or no? You have these things. Yes or no? You have at least X number of things. Yes or no? When you get done with doing that full assessment, you have a pretty good baseline. But again, there's always tailored. You have a guard the door, you need it based on this. And you're talking about lots and lots of different scenarios that they're trying to address when they build these standards and build these controls out. Sometimes they apply to you directly, but you usually have to build your own pieces. Okay. So, towards the end, we're almost dead. We're almost done with this. So this is almost dead. My God. I might be. What's the desired end state? Where are you trying to go, and how long do you think it's going to take? Are there any significant challenges? Right? Think about that. Like, you've got to have an end state. You've got to have a plan to get there. You've got to be able to, going back to the metrics conversation, you've got a plan. You've got to be able to tell whether or not you're making progress or not. Right? Like, I've been doing the same thing for like 6 days straight. I think I'm doing well because I'm still doing it. Have metrics, have some sort of baseline, have milestones. Again, leadership support, technical team support. All right. Some of the things that I've heard. And this is fun because I get to appreciate it. We're a big company. We have different resources. I mentioned that earlier. Oh, we don't worry about that. We don't have to worry about budget. Really? Finding the person who doesn't have a concern about budget. I want to meet that person. I mean, I'm sure that Bill Gates and Larry Ellison and a bunch of others don't have much of those resources. But you know how they got there? By having the resources range, by paying attention to that. You don't get wealthy by destroying money. I don't have priorities, I have portfolio. I love this one. I had to not laugh at that particular CEO who said that. Well, you don't have priorities. How do you run a business? How are you in charge of anything if you can't actually tell me what's the most important to you? It's all important. If everybody's important, nothing is important. Figure out what's important. Because at the end of the day, you have to pick which one of your kids is your favorite. Which one's it going to be? Yes, I have this conversation. So, we operate in every area. Okay, cool. Great. I'm glad you work in different places. I'm glad that you have a broad perspective on everything that you're working with from an enterprise standpoint. Pay attention to all of them. Figure out what your priorities are. Not a portfolio. Put your resources where you need to. And sometimes you're going to find something that's this little thing down here that doesn't matter so much, but creates a vulnerability for everything. Right? So make sure that you're accounting for that too. Don't just say this thing's unimportant, I don't care. I don't know, has anybody heard of Apache struts? Node.js? Right? So these are all things someone can choose, but it's depending on essentially a state of truth on those being secured by somebody who's trying to do it voluntarily, right? So those little things can mean a lot. Make sure that you understand that. Supply chain management is a whole different rabbit hole. We operate in every area. Okay, so here's the other thing too. Bicycles and cars and security. Somebody asked me about whether or not they should do X, Y, and Z for security. Like that's way over. Yeah, it gets the job. Yeah, it gets the job. See, the bicycle lock is not going to secure my car, right? I've got a Jeep, and I leave the top open and the doors off sometimes, right? And you just hit the gas and go with the snap of the lock. So if you actually want to secure a Jeep, you probably should get the key turns. Bad example. But if you want to secure a car, you put it in the garage, right? Do I need a garage for my bicycle? Probably not. Different thief profile, different value profile, different risk profile. So that seems silly. So a bike box not going to work for a car. Car garage will work for a bike, but it's a complete waste of resources. Okay. We're going to use resources. And this is one of the things that people talk about, like, oh man, well, if we do this, then we're going to fire all these people. Well, no, you don't have to fire them. You don't have to hire them. What you need to do is get time to resources. And as a security practitioner, you've got to embrace that things are changing in the perspective of how you're executing. And by putting the money across to risk, you can actually prioritize your business, you can be part of the solution, or part of the problem. Okay. Intelligence drives operations. Now, talking about prioritization, how do you build your priorities? Well, we want to build awareness. Talk about CPEs, we talked about virus global, we didn't talk about virus global. It's good, but it's a bucket of stuff, right? So what you need to worry about is what's important, what it applies to you. There's no saying in the military, intelligence drives operations. Okay. If I don't know where I'm supposed to shoot, I can shoot every direction until I run out of ammo. Not great. Another direction to shoot where the bad guys are, I can shoot in that direction, and I can conserve my ammo and have nothing to fire with. Intelligence drives operations. If you don't have intelligence, if you don't have awareness of what is going on, then you're just dumping money into a hole, hoping for that. Not a great plan for anything. Really. So you need threat intelligence. I've met many companies, very large companies, that don't use threat intelligence. They're trying to understand why they need to. Even if you're a small company, threat intelligence, you can find that for free or cheap in all sorts of different places. If you're a security practitioner and you have these threat intelligence, I highly recommend it. I'm not going to recommend it in what is, because I don't want to tell people to move it together. And everyone has a different company, different capability, and value different but it's worth looking into. Then it's harder to know them, right? So like, if I'm just defending everything, I could put up a wall that's across all the way over here. But if I know that that's the only door that actually reaches out to the outside, I can do that. Before I do this, I said this wasn't a conversation that I didn't have. Does anybody have any questions? Anything?
So you talked about intelligence driving operations. Previous speaker talked about orthogonal sort of paths to careers. One of the things I used to do both at next year and in the private sector is put folks who were new to this kind of concept, vulnerabilities, issues with exploit and so on a bug bounty triage, right? Put it in the queue, watch the stuff that's coming in for you, the BDD program, et cetera, and try to figure out what's paid, what's junk, and what's actually important. With generative AI these days, it's all trash, right? Organizations are, I'm just seeing hundreds and hundreds of fake submissions and so on. So, and what happens is then you change your BDT program to start throwing out more and more submissions, right? You make the requirements stricter, then you get less submissions that potentially correct submissions. So where do you see the role of that going? So it's not, you talk about threat intelligence, like contracting out to a vendor for threat intelligence for your company or your organization. But what about open transparency, open submissions, that kind of thing? And from a sort of educator standpoint, how do we get folks into this sort of thing? If I wanted to get somebody to join a bug bounty program that they're competing against thousands of AI bots, what do we do with that?
So, the tongue in cheek answer that comes to mind is I saw somebody the other day posted on LinkedIn that OpenAI started its own jobs platform. I'm like, okay, cool. So you have AI generated resumes, you do the AI generated platform, you go to the HR AI bots that are going to determine whether they're going to hire somebody. You're going through like 7 different AI systems before you ever get to a human being on the other side, which is amazing. But that is sort of the answer, though. Artificial intelligence is a great tool. And I think that there's a lot of misunderstanding in, I'll just say the general populace about what artificial intelligence is. AI is not a magic wand. A lot of people think so, especially businesses. I would say that ignoring AI in 2025 is like ignoring it in 1995, right? Which seems ridiculous, but I was there because I'm old. And for those of you, I'm not going to look at anybody in particular, but for those of you who were there in 1995, you know what I'm talking about, because the dot-com bubble was huge, and now people are like, oh, this is stupid, I'm just taking paper receipts forever. Credit cards? Who's actually going to take a credit card at McDonald's? Like, why would somebody use your credit card there? You can just pay cash and use a check. Like, these are actual things that people said for the economy back then, right? It's changed a little bit. So the same sort of thing for AI is, when you've got all these things generated, they're garbage in, garbage out. right? So they're gonna have some filters on the back end, and you can't at volume, at scale, have a human do that. You can have AI do that, but again, garbage in, garbage out. So you need humans to manage the AI that's making responsible AI. And that's really what it comes down to, and that's what I think we're gonna see the next, if I had to be speculative, I think that's what you're gonna see the next shift in the next paradigm shift is people go, oh, AI isn't a magic bot. I need people to run AI. I need AI enabling people to enable our AI to enable the business. So I think, does that answer your question?
I'm sure posing a common problem there's no answer to, but the main issue is there's no outside threat intelligence coming in often because you kind of have to throw almost everything out. It's just junk. So even if you have a human management.
But that's where that filtration comes through, and that still comes down to humans, the human in the loop. So when you talk about, bring back to the education question, right? So how do they get into this? You need intelligence analysts, you need cyber intelligence analysts, and there's a lot of companies, like for instance, I do work with the state of Delaware sometimes. They've got folks who look at threat intelligence. And yes, there's stuff that comes through massive, whatever, systems that boil it down, but at the end of the day, there's a human and people looking at something like that doesn't right. So it's the same reason why we still have SOC, security operations centers, because at the end of the day, it's eyes on glass. There's somebody looking at that. And I think as much as people want to think that what AI is going to do is it's going to hopefully filter out a lot of the noise, but then filter out the hallucination. Other questions? Yes, ma'am?
Hi, Diana again, thank you. Does anybody recall the amazing computer lab system that was generated, it was in congruence with NASA and so forth in Holyoke, Massachusetts, by the canals there? Anybody ever go in there? That's why it's really cool to make sure that it's, what's the name of it? Nobody remembers the name of it. Is it still there, right in Holyoke?
That's called high performance computing center.
Yeah, that whole hub there is incredible. And, you know, coming from an education standpoint too, that's a huge place to learn. They have community meetings there too and so forth. So these type of things, I'm sorry, I have a huge issue with, those who are dictating the assessments that you have said earlier. Like, who are the ones that are dictating the standardized assessments? So there's like, you know, if you're a theorist in the technology world and so forth, as this young man is, and what he's trying to say, back in 2002, we started the Homeland Security Act, which is also the Immigration, Customs, So this is under like the Bill of Rights and so forth like that. So technology is now used as an arm, as in the Second Amendment. So it's like the militia, things like that. So going to the technology world and how to determine, especially in psychology, for children who are 12 years old right now, specifically that I'm speaking about, how do we, as adults, as leaders in the community, as parents or guardians, people in juvie and so forth, in the jails and prisons, and then hospitals, how do we just figure out who to vote for or who to recommend in the companies to do these standardized assessment tests, so that way we're siphoning all of the evil propaganda, all the programming, all the brainwashing. You know, remember, you know, history repeats itself, the rise of technology is the fall of humanity. Jay Goodall just passed away. So here in the Science Museum, we have an amazing.
AI didn't do that.
I didn't say that. Guilty. So what I'm saying is that right here, we have the largest planetarium, most popular one in all of the United States of America here in Springfield. We also have, you know, the history of the whatever you would want to believe in. So the biggest format from a Homo sapien, because I am a Homo sapien, is communication. So how do we determine, as poor people, as rich people, as middle class, which that exists, as anything, to end the disassociative association with technology? When you're pushing that finger, you're playing those video games, or trying to figure out how to, you know, remote that drone in Ukraine or in Israel or in Cambodia or wherever. How are we in the school systems here, specifically in Western Massachusetts, are we going to help out these big gurus that are really into these technology worlds, especially in the military, to figure out who is actually starting that type of brainwashing in our children's education, since everything went to Zoom?
So, excuse me, I work here at the center. Paul's a guest speaker, so he really can't answer where you're headed with that question because it's not what he's here for. But if you want to see me afterwards, I'd be happy to chat with you about all those things we have discussed.
It's a great question.
Thank you.
And I could spend hours talking about this. In fact, anybody who's worked with technology for any period of time can spend hours, days, or years talking about that. It is a hugely interesting question. The one thing I will say, to respond to that, to everybody in this room, especially the younger folks, that's what you're here for. It's to answer that question. You're not going to have an answer. Spend the rest of your lives struggling with that, because this is your society. Okay, bring it back. Yes, sir.
Just one quick
Go ahead.
one. What are your thoughts on AI as a risk assessment tool? Is it going to become more prominent, do you think?
Absolutely. AI is doing everything with the future now, right? It's like I used to say about COVID. It doesn't matter whether or not you do COVID. Okay. It doesn't matter whether or not you want to use AI or AI. You're using AI. So, I mean, it is going to be a risk assessment tool. How it is used, what models are being used, how it can be backdoored. There's a whole bunch of risks that go with using AI. Everything from Manchurian candidates to just doing prompt engineering, things beyond that. There's a lot of stuff that can be done. So you've got to be very careful about how you choose those tools. But once you do, again, it's separating wheat from chaff, and that's what AI is really good at. So again, big stuff, finding uncommon patterns and finding commonalities and getting rid of other ones. So yeah, 100%. Yes, ma'am.
I just wanted to make another comment that, I think the AI as being there now seems like a new concept, but AI, ML, with machine learning has been around for years. It's like a lot of your threat tools use machine learning and have used it to detect.
That's an amazing point.
Right, like
People forget about that.
Like it's sort of, I guess, like the .com bubble, but before that, right? When like there was only like internet and DARPA and all that, like it's the time before the actual. And so I think it's important to note that like there's AI for good, there's AI for bad, there's AI for in between, right? There's hackers that use AI and write code, there's people that use AI as well for detecting threats and reducing emergency. So I think
Yeah, I mean, again, it's been years since way before you even could conceive of. Right? I think the first time I picked up a series of machine learning books was in I forgot the guy's name, so I probably took a series of promises. Yes. And it's all
Was the series old when you got it? Got it late early, so it was already old, so you grabbed it.
yes, but I could have read it to itself and anyway. All right, so we're running short on time, which is okay. That's great. I love conversation. I think it's super glad that you guys are actually listening, that this is actually resonating with some folks. What I want to talk about is Tide. Tide detergent. Do you know why Tide was really popular? People steal it. People steal it because you can use it for drug transactions. What? Yeah, because Tide. Who here does not wash their clothes? Just want to say. Okay. So if I can get a jug of Tide, that's what, say, $20 on the open market, I can steal it. It's $20 cash. So literally, and this is, I actually double checked this just to make sure that I wasn't hallucinating this. I'm not an AI. Even still, they're citing Tide as being used as basically a non-currency currency to use for drug transactions. Because there's, do you know what Tide is? No. You don't know what Tide is? No. Never wash your clothes? We don't use Tide. Have you ever seen it? No, actually, we don't use it. You've never heard of Tide? You've never seen the bottle of Tide?
Yeah, it's all the clothes and I make them off.
So you know what it is?
So, yes.
You don't use it, but you know what it is. Yes. Everybody knows what Tide is. It is a universal concept as much as currency. So the reason why I bring it up is, okay, you want to lock up your razors at a grocery store or at a CVS or something like that. That makes sense. Probably don't need to lock up the shampoo. which is everything to the one on the side. That's where actually having standards and metrics and doing risk assessment matters. I can go through Blue's Tide. I have no idea why. You know what? Don't even care why. Maybe I'll do a deep in-depth analysis on it. But at the end of the day, that car's getting bumped up.
Working lots of their tied that way when I was living in Boston. I was so confused. I'm like, why are the underwear and the tie locked up?
Look it up. Look the Tide is your ass.
Yeah, it's just a little button. I was like, okay. I don't use tie, but.
Okay, so just look at, I think this is my last slide, if not pretty close. So your timeline, it means executive support, getting your leadership to support you. Do a baseline assessment. Here's where we're at and where we need to go. Strategic plan. Here's here's how we're going to get there. Pick a risk framework. I'm not going to burden you to talk about what risk frameworks are better than others. Each one has a different flavor, RMF, all of them, different things. Whether you're a nation state or you're a small business or you're an enterprise, etc. You have to build an operational plan. Figure out how you're actually going to do it, and how your organization is going to support that. Intelligence and intelligence support plan. A lot of people forget that, and I think we covered why that's super important. Over the long years, metrics reporting. You have metrics on a system that doesn't exist yet, but you've got to have the groundwork there so that you can get there when you need to. And then you get them up. That's all I got, guys. If you guys want to reach out to me ever, I'm gonna hide in your time. If you guys have any questions about anything I've talked about, I have a feeling from talking to some of the folks here that I might end up coming back around for the events. Picking and screaming, big smile on my face. But regardless, reach out to Mr. Kingsley. He's a great guy, he's a great resource, and he can get in touch with me if you guys have any questions or if you want to talk about some stuff that we do inside the military, if you guys are interested in going to the National Guard or tourism and stuff like that, feel free to just pass things through him and we'll get it over to me and we'll go from there.
Thank you very much. Appreciate everyone today. So that's it for our presentation portion today. If you'd like to hang around and network with each other,